Audio coming through. There we go. All right, having some little technical issues there at the beginning, but looks like we're ready to rock and roll now with a late night logical, plausible, probable live stream. Gonna have a little bit of a short rant and then open it up to the audience. Those of you who are entertained by the title of this, which is Does Atheism Cause Adult Mental Retardation? Yes, I am poking a little bit of fun, but I'm actually looking at this more from a reduction in cognitive capacity. I'm not actually saying they're necessarily losing IQ points, just unable to actually access them and do high level thinking and look beyond their brainwashing, their talking points, and actually consider the just borderline dumbassery that comes out of their mouths. It's really starting to fascinate me, to be honest, and gonna reach a tipping point with the responses I've been getting to the code argument since yesterday. I know it's just gonna get even worse. I had anticipated it. I predicted it. I issued caveats against, and exactly what I predicted. Oh, it's happening, and it's honestly a mind bender. I'm like, I don't know how much more direct you have to be, and then people to do exactly what you said they're going to do when you said, hey, doing this is not what is being addressed. And we see this all over the place, right? Like, it doesn't matter what type of evidence, no matter how you counter one of their talking points, completely debunk it, or even when the fellow atheists, and by the way, I forgot to issue the caveat of I'm speaking directly in regards to YouTube atheists. I'll issue a couple exceptions for the more academic types, but the YouTube atheists are just reaching they're reaching Mount Everest in regards to the it's really getting interesting, folks. So in that context, I'm just going to show you real quick a couple of examples of what I'm talking about and how I just don't understand how they're not understanding this stuff. Okay, so the code argument yesterday, I unveiled for everybody, pretty straightforward, pretty blunt. I outlined the details, right? And the the basics of like, here's what's going to happen, here's the argument, here's what it says. Okay, but I just want to reiterate the foundational caveat, this entire video and the entire argument. The genetic codes are literal codes, not metaphor, analogy, simile, nor anything other that looks like a code but isn't actually code, escape mechanism. Okay, so let's just scroll down slightly and let's see. There's multiple to choose from. Let's see. Where is that one? DNA isn't a code, though. Okay, there's one. Wow. Aren't you kind of setting it up to be irrefutable? If we just assume it is an actual code, not that it has some code-like characteristics, that would imply a code writer, but we don't see that. We see mindless chemical reactions, mindless parties doing the one and only thing they're able to do, obey the laws of physics. We see mindless chemicals that like to replicate themselves based purely on their chemistry. Any material that didn't have this affinity to reproduce itself would die out quickly. Everything else has just been added to allow that process to go on, to compete with other bags of chemicals for limited resources. I don't even know what to say in regards to that. It's like, okay, so basically in the first point, you recognize the significance. Like, he's actually admitting, like, if we just assume that it is an actual code, not that it has some code-like characteristics, that would imply a code writer, but we don't see that. Okay, so that's the entire point, is if it is a code, then Is it the logical conclusion that there is a author of it? And if your response is it's just mindless chemicals, when the whole premise of the argument is that it's a literal code, now what is your conclusion? Nope, it's bags of chemicals. It's just bags of chemicals. And of course, that obviously is going to lead to one of the things that I will obviously expand in part 2 of the code argument, which will just be the utter annihilation of these ridiculously stupid YouTube atheist talking points. But I don't know how many more times has to be reiterated. The medium, which contains a code or information of any kind, the medium has zero bearing on the code properties itself. It doesn't matter what the medium is. That's the entire point of a code, is you can translate it into an infinite potential number of mediums just based on whichever symbols you are translating it into. This is not rocket science, folks. This is extraordinarily basic information theory and communication theory 101, which I also stated in the video. Make sure your responses comply with information and communication theory 101. And these people that are responding are not doing so. They clearly have no knowledge of this and are further supporting the position I took in the video about how, the ignorance defense mechanism is not actually a valid one, and you'd be considered a moron in any other context if you stated that claim and then didn't think people would laugh you out of the room for all this stuff. I mean, it's just, I don't know how to deal with it. Which is why I say in the context of, does atheism cause cognitive retardation in YouTube atheists? I mean, I honestly wonder if, in order to believe what we hear from them, you have to, in order to avoid the evidence and the arguments and the obviousness, which is your very existence, in order to reach the conclusion that the theist arguments are not correct, it requires a literal suspension of all rational thought. You must suspend your cognitive abilities to be logical and rational, intuitive, and to be able to just put 2 and 2 together. It really is blowing my mind of just this past year. Obviously I've been more heavily involved in apologetics in general, just interacting with people on this topic that I have in my whole life. And it really is getting fascinating. I mean, the interactions with Top Dog, for example, the last couple of days, mind benders. People responding, leaving comments, folks I interacted with people on Facebook were complaining to me that the premises being put forth are too complicated and I need to simplify that for them. And I'm like, I don't know how much more I can dumb down this argument. Like, I'm using some of the most simplistic concepts that should be, for anybody who has a modicum of reading comprehension, should be able to deduce what is being stated, and just analyze what is being stated. And if you're going to immediately run to, it's just bags of chemicals, and I have people ask me questions like, well, what if it's mutable? Or, well, birds sing. It's like, yep, you're right. Birds do sing. Are they intelligent agents? Like, the initiation of an encoded song from a bird, it's an intelligent agent. We're talking about the original source of the code, which enables them to execute song. Like, the fact that this concept is like going over people's heads is really starting to disturb me. Of like, what is happening to society? Number one. Number two, how anybody can think that devolution is not occurring is just beyond me. I mean, when you look at the studies showing the tangible, measurable decline in IQ over the last century, as an example, like, we're getting dumber, folks. We're getting really dumb. And it's on full display in the YouTube atheist world. I mean, the level of desperation to avoid the obvious reaches new bounds on a daily basis. But okay, so enough of my tangent. I'm I'm fighting off a migraine, so I should probably save the atheists from a little bit of vitriol, because I don't have the energy to be as vicious as I normally would. But yeah, so if anyone wants to join the stream, it's link is in the description. I'll post it again in the chat. I think I actually got it pinned in chat as well. Let's see. Sandy Pigeon says, how do you do that highlight thing for replies? I'm such a knuckle dragger. But Flash Gordon, does atheism cause retardedness? Is like asking, do babies cause diarrhea? And there's a surprising similarity. Yep, it's yeah. Sandy made a good point a minute ago. Pretty simple. Why hasn't abiogenesis happened again? Big bucks in it. I agree, Sandy. It's it really is amazing. I mean, what's really fascinating, one of the things I find extraordinarily fascinating is the reality that you can directly contradict and counter a atheist talking point with credible sources in real time. And the people countering their talking point can also be admitted atheists, or at least not theists. And the atheist claims that whatever you put in front of them that debunks their argument must not be true, that it's cherry-picked. And in no way, shape, form, or fashion can it debunk their position. And I'm just like, okay, so you insist I show you proof that logic and argument and conceptualization of things and analysis is not enough. You must see empirical evidence. So then you show them evidence that is being presented, which counters the point. And that is immediately dismissed. It's like, okay, so you live in a perpetual quicksand, and nothing that comes towards you is ever something you can stand on to escape the mire in which your life and your cognitive existence is stuck. I mean, it's Flash. He disagrees with me on people getting dumber. The kids totally are super smart with all their tech and know-how compared to the dumb effery they taught us at school 25 years ago. Yeah, it's kind of interesting, the point you're making there. The technology has actually been studied. It's pretty interesting. There's actually been studies on the impact of Google, for example, and that instant access to data is actually having an interesting negative ramification on your cognitive function, in that because you, quote unquote, know you have access to this information, your mind, not everybody, but a significant percentage of folks, their brain is literally not storing the data. It's more of a, oh, checkbox. I found this on Google. If I need it again, just Google it. And so it's, I mean, I found that happening to me too. I've been trying to make it a much more of a point to spend more time repeating the information so it's being stored in long-term memory rather than flushed in from short-term memory, or just the only piece of data being stored with, like, yes, there was access for it. There is access to the answer to whatever the question is, and storing a much more superfluous component of the potential data storage. And I mean, I get it from an efficiency standpoint, but at the same time, I find it kind of frustrating. Even sometimes in debates of, like, I know that I've read about X, Y, or Z, and I'm not being able to rapidly extract the information from my head, even though I know I read it. It wasn't necessarily stored in its entirety. And it's kind of frustrating. But anyway, again, folks, anyone wants to join this portion of the conversation, feel free to come on in and join. We'll have some fun. Welcome, Jamie. And Jamie says, does Parody bear go boom in an outdoor room? Yes, the answer is da. Man, last night, I tell you what, Parody bear was having some very epic and entertaining jokes in the chat. It was pretty funny. I think Jamie, I gotta appreciate you. You were putting forth some interesting stuff in the comments about the code argument. Interesting things to consider on, should I change determination to predetermination in the I think it was the third premise. Yeah, I think in the context of the wording that I used, determination is the appropriate word for my sentence structure. However, I may need to restructure that and use precognition just to dumb it down even more for the atheists, because I mean, even simplified concepts are seeming to be above the fold of cognitive function. But anyways, so it's going to be interesting over this next couple of weeks. Christmas coming up, kind of debating what I'm going to do with going into the new year. Although something I am going to have to pull off here very shortly, I'm going to have to do a 1,000 sub watch party. So thanks to everybody in the chat and who watches this later. This morning, actually, I hit the 1,000 sub mark, which was pretty awesome. I was pretty excited about that. I was like, wow, it's amazing. The same day issue a formal, or the same, set of time I issue a formal challenge to the atheists, I'm also hitting the 1,000 sub mark. That's kind of cool. I was pretty happy about that. See, Montez. Oh, by the way, thank you for your kind words in the comments earlier, Montez. And they say, would you rather believe there is no God or believe Bikini Bottom is a real place in the sea with SpongeBob? That's a tough one. I mean, separating the fantasy land of SpongeBob SquarePants from the reality of eternal existence, man, it's kind of a toss up on which way gonna go. I mean, it's kind of crazy there. Let's see. Jamie says, could be short and perhaps I'm waiting on my computer. Oh, gotcha. Jamie, by the way, if you ever wanted to get on your phone, usually works pretty well. But when my laptop blew up, this is like 6 months ago, I found that I was actually able to, it's actually pretty cheap. I bought a Ethernet adapter for my phone, and I was actually able to direct connect my phone to the Ethernet. And I think it was like $12 or something on Amazon. And presto, you can have super speed data connection on your phone. And if you get into, like, I did a full scale, I had like 2 or 3 debates on Modern Day Debate on my phone. I also, actually, sidebar, I actually got kind of crazy and jury rigged a hub, so I was able to plug both Ethernet and my Yeti mic and headphones into a hub, which then connected to my phone, which was attached to a tripod on my desk. And I was doing full scale. It was great. The amount of wiring that was all connecting up to my phone in order to pull off those stupid debates was kind of amazing. It was like, wow, the creativity required here to figure this stuff out. Jamie, yep. So Ethernet cable, just plug it into your router and then get an adapter and plug the Ethernet cable into the adapter and then that directly into your phone. So assuming you have either a whatever the Apple version is or USB-C, that's what I have is USB-C. And I was able to plug it straight in, and there we go. It was if just doing an Ethernet connection, and then if I wanted the hub with like microphone plug-in and all that other kind of stuff, what I did there was I had a hub. So I had an adapter, a USB to USB-C adapter on the hub, and then all the other cables, Ethernet and USB for the microphone and stuff, plugged into the hub, and then did the attachment. And then the hub I had also allowed for a power connection. So I had both a power connection, Ethernet, microphone, yep, all plugged into the same hub, and headphones. So it was nice. Yeah, Jamie, I've got a Note 10, so your Galaxy S20 should be able to do it too. It's just got to get a little creative, mess around with stuff a little bit. Well, let me see here. There's something I was gonna show. There's a paper I'd come across recently that I thought was pretty interesting that I might share in context of tonight. But as I'm still talking about the cognitive problems, let's see here. Ken Roy says, yeah, it should work on an S20. Let me see if I can find that paper real quick. Yeah, I agree with you. It's getting pretty crazy. Jamie, no, the hub didn't need software. It's so your phone should be set. So when you're looking for a hub, you'll usually most of them usually have if they have like USB-Cs, they'll have two slots, one for power and one for audio. But if you have anyone that has USB slots as well, then depending on what kind of mic you have, you can either plug it into a USB slot, and then if the hub, you can get a standard hub as long as you have a adapter. If the hub has a standard USB plug, then you'll need an adapter that will enable you to connect that hub to your phone. Ken Roy, what are you asking exactly? Are you talking about, is it me or is it atheist debunk videos are getting worse? Are you talking about the videos that apologists are doing to debunk the atheist, or are you saying that the atheist videos are getting worse? Which direction are you going with that? When you debate against atheists in the future, please can you use a sound clip of dessert, chilled monkey brains from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Man, I think I was maybe 9 or maybe 10. I was not. I think I was probably 9 or 10 when first time I watched that movie. And I'll tell you what, the scene not long after that where they're like getting trapped in the temple, and man, I was like, I remember being like terrified, like, oh my goodness, Indiana Jones is gonna die. I thought the monkey brains was funny, and then started freaking out when they were about to die in the temple. Yeah, I would agree with you. Yeah, it's getting pretty bad. Yeah, Ken, right. I completely agree. Yeah, the atheist videos they're reaching levels of absurdity. And this is the thing. I was very fascinated to see if this is what was going to happen with responses to my challenge, because I've been observing this in other ones. And godless engineer is a prime example of this. So Braxton Hunter over on Trinity Radio, he's done several like open questions videos, different things to atheists, and got a bunch of responses. And godless engineer, of course, keeps doing responses to him. And Braxton will sit there and leading up to each question will be like, okay, so here's the caveat. Don't approach it like this. This is not what I mean. I do not mean this. I know why you might think this is what I mean, but this is not what I mean. I do not repeat. I do not mean, and then insert X. And then, and then you watch their videos and it's like, it's almost verbatim. Like what he said, he didn't mean is what they respond with. And it's like, how much more clear does one have to be than to issue 17,000, exceptions and clarifications and caveats of like, I do not mean X. I don't mean it in this context, in this context, in this context, in any way, shape, form, or fashion. Do I mean, or do I expect for you to interpret it in this context, in this manner, in this method? By any stretch of the imagination, do not come to this conclusion, because this is not the conclusion which I am presenting. And then they do exactly what it's honestly amazing, and it's part of what kind of my observations of those videos the past couple weeks is partially what sparked this premise of does atheism cause adult mental retardation? I mean, it's like, oh boy, it's crazy. Super redeemed energy. I am 36. That's how old I am. Let's see, what does Montez say? Why are there only 7 billion people on Earth when us humans have been here for like millions of years? Why is there a big drop in population just 1,000 years ago? It's very interesting. It's a sidebar on that. Something that's kind of interesting. There's a relative, I was looking at this the other day, actually. Pull this up again. Let's see. The timeline of population growth is amazingly steady, right, from time of Christ till now. And let's share my screen real quick, and you guys can look at the same thing I'm looking at here. Okay, so if you see this chart, or graph actually, you can see, for all intents and purposes, I mean, minor uptick, very, very, very minor uptick, but from AD 0, so the year of our Lord, until the Industrial Revolution, for all intents and purposes, the global population stayed basically the same. I mean, that's just amazing. And then we look at the skyrocket, and just the utter explosion just in the past 100 years is quite staggering. Let's see. Let's look at what was world population in 1900. 1900. 1.6 billion people in 1900, and we're now at, I believe, 7.6 is the let's see, current world population. Nope, not 1900. Thank you. 7.8. Wow. Okay, so we've got wow. That is that's rather staggering. Wow. So we've increased 6.2 billion in the past 120 years. That's amazing. And I remember, I want to say, let's find out what it was, 1995. I think that's the first year I ever remember looking at this. Okay, so the world population has increased 2.1 2.1 billion people in the past 25 years. 2.1 billion in the past 25 years. It really is staggering. And let's go back and let's see what the population was 1000 BC. Historic estimates. Okay, here we go. I'd prefer a chart. Let's make this easy. Yeah, we'll just Wikipedia. Okay. Wow. Getting pretty low. We're in the millions? Wow. Okay. Interesting. Yes, if you look here, let me look at the relative stability. That's for what? Huh, she went down a little bit. Well, something else to think about too is you think about population is the World War One and World War Two, but World War One specifically caused the utter devastation of the population growth of Europe. So I actually randomly looked this up a couple months ago, and if you look at the populations of Germany and the United States at the beginning of World War II, they were almost the exact same. So let's look that up real quick, just to showcase the comparison. And let's see, population of Germany. Let's see, World War One was what, 1914, I think. Okay, yep. Population of Germany, 1914, 67 million. Okay, let's see, United States was 99 million. Okay, but now let's look at the population of Germany now. They've got 83 million. Okay, so 1914, Germany's population was 67 million. So they've increased a net of 16 million people net increase in a little over 100 years. Now let's look at the United States. So United States was 99 million in 1914. Okay. And I think we're like, the most recent is 340, I think it is. 331. Okay, so the United States has increased 330 million, or sorry, 230 million people in the exact same time frame. Germany has increased a grand net total of 16 million. That is staggering when you really contemplate the differences in, the long-term outcome of what has happened in Germany versus the United States. And I think it's pretty similar with Russia. Actually, maybe more devastating for Russia. Let's see. Millions of people died in Russia, and then obviously had all the Soviet Union stuff. Wow. Population of Russia, 1914, 166 million. So Russia's population, wow, was actually 67 million greater than the United States at the same time frame. And they actually may have had a net loss. Yes, they have. Wow. Okay. Wow. Do you see? Look at that, folks. So Russia. Hang on. Is that right? Wow. 166 million in 1914. As of 2020, they only have. Wow. So Russia has lost basically 20 million. Their population is reduced by 20 million in 100 years. The United States population has increased 230 million. And Germany has only increased a net of 16 million. That is amazing when you really think about that. Wow, that's staggering. What's up? I'm guessing from the screen name, Will has joined. What's going on? Will, you're on mute. Will, you're on mute, buddy. Oh, he's going to be right back. Okay. Well, hold on just one sec. I'm going to grab... Yeah, Flash, I'm very interested to see what happens with the with Brexit. It's definitely going to be interesting. What's going on, Mr. Miller? How are you doing?
Oh, I'm pretty good. Oh yeah,
Thanks for joining the stream. What brings you in?
oh yeah. I'm just was kind of curious because with current conversation with the population. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're coming through.
Oh, actually, I let me. Oh wait, sorry. Hey, just need to pause the. There we go. All right, all right. Is that better?
Yeah, it's way better. Yeah, you were cracking up there for a second.
All right, cool. Yeah, so I was curious about the population size, and I was wondering uh, like what's up with Russia? Like, are, like is it the famines just like we're kicking their butt during World War II or something that bad, and they never like recovered, or that seems really bad.
Well, Russia, there's multiple facets. So, I mean, literally, I believe, I'm pretty sure on this. I'll have to look it up here in a minute. But I believe that Russia suffered more fatalities in World War One than anybody else, like any other country. I mean, it was utter devastation. And then they also had so you had the Bolshevik Revolution, you have World War One, then you have the building of the Soviet Empire and all that. Then you have World War Two, and then you have all of the just mammoth amount of executions that were orchestrated by Stalin. Um, the one of the most gruesome quotes I think of all time is, uh, Oh man, I forget the exact verbatim. Let me look it up. The paraphrase is uh, if you kill, oh man, I gotta look it up. It's been years since I used to know this off the top of my head. Here, Stalin's quotes.
It's like, I mean,
Okay, so here we go. So this is Stalin's quote: "A single death is a tragedy. A million deaths is a statistic." And there's estimates that he had literally millions executed. And that's before you even account for all the people who died of starvation.
That is crazy. I mean, like you would normally think like, the population would like bounce back since then. The fact that I don't know, that's
okay. So here it is. Okay. So after assessing 20 years of historic research in Eastern European archives, it is asserted that Stalin deliberately killed about 6 million, which rises to 9 million if foreseeable deaths arising from policies are taken into account. It's honestly staggering. And the irony, though, is that even though Stalin is one of the more famous dictators of the past 100 years, the number of people he killed is paltry compared to some of the others. So like Pol Pot, let's just Google it. He killed a ridiculous amount. Let's see.
Fascism is scary. Like, it's weird because like, was there like not enough people like not willing to fight back, or was this people everyone is starving to like even worry about fighting? Was that what's going on? Like, is that
well, you have to remember
explain like the high alcoholism in Russia? Like,
well, you have to remember that and this is why like communism is not something that you want to have. Like with the Soviets, I mean, they had massive power. I mean, the Communist Party. Same thing with China. Russia, they had dramatic power, and they had the police state, and people were conditioned to view the government as the parental figure.
Yep.
And hey, what's up, man? And that's just the reality of what happened. But in the context of, why did they fight back, right? Well, there is a reason that historically every dictatorial, tyrannical institution in recorded history, one of their primary ways to avoid confrontation and uprising was they made it illegal to own weapons. Whether it was in medieval times, it was you weren't allowed to have a sword. I mean,
I thought it was a Japan thing. Like, wait, so like, how would they enforce that in medieval times? Like, I don't.
Well, they just like the knights came
run up all the blacksmiths and be like, "Hey, you only allowed to make swords for me." Is that how that worked back then, or?
Pretty much. I mean, if you didn't, I mean, it was you have to think about it too. Like, it's not like people were living in the same types of environments that we are now. It was serfdom, heavily in that context, and you would end up, with all the battles and attacks and looting and raiding and stuff that would happen. You relied upon, like, even though you had to be in servitude, in return you got protected from being from the enemies chopping your head off. Now, if you pissed off the lord that you served, he might chop your head off, but you were less likely to get your head chopped off by him than the Vikings that were coming down to raid the villages and such. And I think in modern times, like Western civilization people specifically, like, we've lost understanding of that whole premise. Like, it's a very thin line of demarcation between quote unquote civilization and mob rule, anarchy, and may the strong survive. And he who has the best weapons wins. But in context of the Soviet Empire, for example, and this applies historically, I mean, you weren't allowed to have weapons. And it's like, okay, so if everybody, I mean, think about this. Where are you from, Miller? Mr. Miller?
Yeah, I was born in the Bahamas, but I was raised pretty much like in the U.S.
Okay.
So it was like North Carolina.
Okay, gotcha. So here in the States, we don't understand the concept of, like, you might not own one, but it's 99.99999% chance you know somebody that does own a weapon.
Right.
If not multiple, right?
Right.
And it's more of the norm for somebody to have one than depending on where you live, obviously, but in certain parts of the country is a exponentially greater probability somebody's gonna have a weapon than not, right?
Right.
That's not how it is in the majority of the world. And
yeah,
like I grew up in England, for example, I was actually born in England on a military base. Lived there for 18 years, and I lived in the UK when they issued their. There was the Dunblane massacre, and it was a school shooting in Dunblane, and
I love those.
the gun control activists, managed to use it to convince the parliament to pass like all this like hardcore restrictive gun control legislation, right? And I remember this vividly. I was like 11 years old, I think, when that happened, and I remember reading about it because, of course, I was going to a military school and on the base, so I was learning about our Constitution and Second Amendment, all that kind of stuff. So I'm learning all this stuff in school, and then I'm reading about how in Britain, where I'm living, they're taking that away. That right doesn't exist. It's not guaranteed, right? And so, lo and behold, you had to turn in your guns. Like, you didn't have an option. Those pistols, you weren't allowed. And there's major restrictions on shotguns, rifles, all that kind of stuff. And not only that, they also put ridiculously moronic restrictions on how you could use your weapon. So, like, for example, I remember this. I lived out in the Fens, which was giant military bases and then freaking farmers' fields. And so there's all these farmers walking everywhere. And I'll never forget this old man. He was like in his late 70s. He got arrested and went to prison for shooting a group of thugs who were attacking him on his own property.
Wow.
And he shot them with rock salt. He didn't even shoot them with like actual like buckshot or birdshot. He shot them with rock salt to like get out of here. Like they're on his property, breaking his stuff. Coming, like, a group of them are coming. Okay, so the man's in his like late 70s. There's a group of young bucks coming at him. This is in the UK, yeah, coming at him.
Wow.
Right? And he shoots them with rock salt. And he got arrested and sent to jail and sent to prison.
Wow. For how long?
I think it was 3 years.
Wow.
And that I'm just using that as an anecdotal evidence, but there's like that became the commonality, right?
But isn't it in USA you have the right to shoot someone if you ask them to leave on your property and they don't agree? You can shoot them.
Well, some states, yes. I mean, there's the castle doctrine, which is
if they're from behind, you cannot shoot them. That's what I've heard too.
Well, yes and no. I mean, the castle doctrine in principle is that you have the right to defend your property. And then in the context, in some states, the castle doctrine actually extends to your car. And usually there's a few additional provisions on that. And then some states there's additional provisions of like, if they're running away and they're still on your property, then you can't shoot them. Or once they leave your domicile, even if they're in your front yard, if they're retreating, then don't shoot them, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. But if someone entered to your own house, John, and they have a knife and you have a baby and your wife, would you shoot them if they refuse to leave?
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah,
I live in Tennessee.
That's like a nod.
I live in Tennessee, so we have very detailed, we have very blanket.
Dude, here there's no weapon. We cannot it's hard to get like a pistol over there, and you guys can get like full shot by shot. I think you guys can get auto weapon, right? If they were made before 1982 or something like that.
Yeah, some exceptions.
Yeah, some exceptions, but the vast.
They're expensive though. They're like 25,000. They're old.
Well, the pricing varies obviously, but
relatively.
very, very few people have those now. I mean, it's very rare.
Well, there's people that literally have rocket launcher.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's some. I'm saying those are outliers. That's not common at all. Now having, and here's the thing that really pisses me off about like the gun rights activists are so stupid. They're so ignorant, and they take advantage of people's ignorance so much. It's amazing. Like a 223 AR-15 is no freaking different than any other kind of rifle. And in reality, a 223 is a less powerful bullet. Like, I mean, obviously you can change the load to increase the load.
I read about that.
But it's not a giant bullet. Like, it doesn't have the stopping power of other types of rifles. And I'm like, you are making the gun that's actually the least, relatively, in terms of like relativity, like obviously the 22 is less lethal, but you guys are acting like it's because of the way it looks. This is the more dangerous weapon. It's like,
yeah,
you guys don't know what you're talking about. Like, you guys are idiots.
Like going back to the whole point, and I get America is like exception. You know, we're pro gun and everything like that, and most places are not. But like, it's just baffling me. It's surprising me that people are okay with living in a state that they know they don't have a right to defend themselves. Now, granted, most of the Western world are relatively peaceful, but it's just, I don't know. I can't wrap my mind around that. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I personally live in Canada. And I'm kind of like, it's not like USA over there, but I'm kind of confident because, there's camera on my house and all that type of stuff. But to say that I would live in campaign without a weapon, I don't think I will, because someone can literally get in your house. But I've heard right now in Florida, like, you cannot even find bullets. They're so rare. Like, everyone is buying the bullets. They're like $1 literally for one bullet now.
Oh, there's definitely a shortage. Trust me, I've been attempting to go and buy some myself, and the 9mm and well, actually most of them are selling out now, but like 9mm, 223, and some of the other more standards are they're just gone. You can get 308 is usually, they get a few boxes of 308, will usually be sitting in the store, but yeah, it's and then like the more very rare stuff like the 7mm and stuff will usually be in a couple boxes available, but yeah, it's pretty restricted. But Sandy, welcome to the stream. I know
it's Chris, right?
What'd you say, Will?
I think it's Chris. Is that you, Chris?
No, it's Sandy is you're friends with Sal Cordova, I believe, right? Didn't you I've seen you on one of his streams, haven't I?
Yeah, I'm having a stream with him tonight too.
Oh, you are?
Nice.
Awesome.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, yep. So you're coming through. You're former military yourself, aren't you, Sandy?
Yeah, I'm a retired SEAL officer. So when I heard you guys talking weapons, I thought I'd chime in.
I figured it's about sometime. So.
Well, real quick. So Hate Love Nothing was making an interesting point a minute ago. Let's see if I can find that chat. About today England has extreme knife restriction. I know. Are you in? Do you live in England? HLN. I because of where I grew, that was my childhood home. I kind of pay relative attention to what's going on in Europe and specifically in the UK. And I remember when the mayor of London issued the restriction and made kitchen knives illegal. Like you can no longer buy a pointy kitchen knife in London because too many people were getting stabbed.
Yeah, London.
I'm like, okay, so you have a serious problem when you make kitchen knives illegal because people are buying them to stab other people. Like,
I've seen a documentary.
You have a problem. You have a serious problem, and what's the problem? It's because all the bad guys in London and they know that nobody has a weapon. And they know that most of the cops don't have a freaking weapon. Therefore, I'm going to go stab you. And my chances of getting away with it are very high. I mean, it's just...
watch out. They're probably going to like ban Jello. Do you know you could actually make a knife out of Jello?
Really?
I didn't know that.
Yes, you can.
Oh, yeah, you just make it draw down. And but I've seen a documentary about London. There was like literally that 17-year-old kid. He had like a katana in his pants, like a little katana, because like literally you don't walk there during the night. You're just gonna get stabbed. I mean, this is kind of crazy.
Yeah, London's gotten out of control, especially in the Muslim Quarter. And if you guys have ever seen the guys who've been back there who've been doing Bible evangelism, it's literally you can't even go into the Muslim Quarter anymore.
Yeah, they'll just stab you. They'll just
Did
expose
they
yourself.
did they ban evangelism in the
Well,
Pretty
they
much,
didn't
yeah.
ban it. They didn't ban it, but she didn't do it.
Well, they've actually been arresting. It's video, it's documented that corner street preachers have been getting arrested and for preaching the Bible. And
Yeah, absolutely. It's that way in Dearborn, Michigan too. Now it's almost as bad, and there are Muslim patrols out on the streets as well. The Sharia enforcers, but anybody who has a Bible is going to get have a talking to or beat down. So
I'm going over. I'm going to start a stream with Saul. We're going to be speaking about DNA. So I'll pass on after the stream, John.
oh, nice,
Okay.
awesome. Yeah,
Yep.
I'll probably wrap this one up here pretty shortly. We might hop over to your stream. That'll be good.
Yeah, I've actually I don't know what's your view about that, but I found so someone sent me a 1,500 page biology book, like the basic biology. Do you think I should start by reading that? Because I finished like reading all about information theory.
Okay, yeah, I mean that's a good next step.
All right, I'll pass on in like 1 hour or 1 hour and 30. I'll see you guys later.
I mean,
Stay safe. All right, God bless.
God bless.
yeah.
It's interesting. The the oh man, I'm trying to brain freeze on the term. What's the term for the groups in what's happening all over the place? But they're going in coordination to find young girls.
Oh,
term for it.
I know what you're talking about.
MS-13.
No, this is a Muslim,
Muslims,
specifically a Muslim thing. It's a I can't believe I'm having a brain freeze on the term. Let me Google it real quick. Curling. Oh man, what's that term? It's a legal term.
Well, the human trafficking thing.
Grooming gangs.
Grooming gangs.
Yeah.
I mean, that stuff is just mind bending.
Like
what's happening in plain sight, and some of the I've read a couple books written by people living in the UK right now that have gone around just like because like the government won't talk about it. They won't make it public. They won't admit to what's happening. And people go around and like talk to local police, and it's like, oh, we have formal structured relations. Like, okay, before we arrest somebody, we go to the appropriate leaders inside of these no-go zone, and then we get authorization to go and arrest somebody. Or they will say no.
In effect, Sharia law has been implemented in those zones, and for them to even deny that their zones are subject to the laws of London or to the laws of the UK is just incredible. And that's been tried already in Dearborn. They haven't succumbed to it yet, but it's to follow, as well as in Minnesota, and of all places, Murfreesboro, Tennessee has got a problem as well. And I think you live there, don't you, John?
I mean, Murfreesboro. I was actually in Murfreesboro earlier today.
Yeah.
Murfreesboro is about 25 miles south of where I live, but
okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the relative metro area.
Yeah. So I have a question with you guys. Like, what do you think about the obvious? Well, to me, it seems obvious the impending pendulum swing, the opposite direction. Because I've been noticing that a lot of I'm trying to be charitable, but when I say white supremacist groups rising in those areas, I mean,
well, you got to be careful about using.
Right. I don't know what really call them, but I know the media's call them that.
Yeah,
but I know it's more nuance about that. I would just say.
The Boogaloo Boys are a bunch of knuckleheads. I don't even know what their planks are. But the Proud Boys, actually, you can go online and see what, and their leaders are of a mixed ethnic origin.
I'm talking about. No, I was talking about the UK.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah. There are groups in the UK that they're popping up. They're not happy about the grooming gangs. I'll just put it that way.
Well, for
And
sure.
he's trying to smear
Well,
them.
and that's the thing with you're absolutely right. They are popping up. I mean, Tommy Robinson is the kind of the leader of. He kind of catalyzed a lot of that stuff, but I mean, you got to think about. To me, here's what actually has to be considered in relation to what's happening in the UK. It's already happened in France too. It's happening in Scandinavia as well. I mean, just put it in context here in the United States, right? Let's assume it was becoming common that there were your daughter, your friend's daughter, your niece, your neighbor's kids, like if they're female,
Yeah,
there is a strong probability there's going to be groups of men that are going to be trying to get them addicted to drugs and turned into sex slaves. And there's like a very aggressive move. This isn't the rarity. This isn't the outlier. This is common, right? And they're just roaming the streets. And let's take this next step further. And you report all this to the cops, and they do nothing.
Yeah.
You report to the media, and they don't report on it. You take it to your legislature, and they do nothing. They act like it's not happening. When they're questioned, they deny that it even is occurring. And you have witnessed it, right? You have dealt with the ramifications of your friends, family members, etc., having this happen to them, right? And nobody will do anything. Okay, let's think about this here in the United States. Do you actually think, if this was going on and nothing was being done, do you really think that men here in the United States would allow that to continue?
I pray to God that they won't.
I wager they would. I wager that law would be taken into the own hands. But this also goes back to the, what we were kind of talking about before in terms of, right to defend oneself and right to keep and bear arms, right? Like,
all right.
It's okay. So we're gonna go have a like baseball bat and like hatchet and knife battle, right? Like this is what we're doing, or we're gonna show up armed to the freaking gills and be like, "You're coming with us," to the guys. Just these kind of scenarios. It's a totally different dynamic, and in France and Germany and UK and Scandinavia, like the vast majority of people do not have. Like, that's not even an option for them. Like, and if the cops won't do anything, what are they going to do about it? Nothing. Like, I mean, best case scenario, you can go have a brawl. And I mean, obviously that's starting to occur. So you have to think about it. If that's what's happening, you can only imagine how bad it must be if it's reached that point.
Yeah. I mean, like, I find it funny because, like, I feel like if, like, gangs and, like, migrants are able to smuggle in weapons and grenades and stuff like that, I don't know. I feel like I would. I feel like I would. If I was in their shoes, I feel like I would find a way to. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
Well, yeah, but you got to think about it too from the perspective that I'm guessing you're a law-abiding citizen,
right? Yeah,
for the most part, right? Like, what are you going to do?
Certainly.
Well, I guess I'm gonna. I mean, I'm not saying you're like perfect, but I mean, you're probably. I'm assuming you're not hanging out with the drug.
Yeah, I'm not. You don't
have somebody on
drive-bys on the weekend.
you don't have somebody on speed dial like, hey man, so I know I've been out of the game for a while, but I'm gonna need a key and 2 9s, and if you got some good, you got a short shotgun, I'll take it. I mean that's not who you gonna call for that, right? But, of course, here in the States, it's like I'm going to the gun shop and getting stuff. But over there, it's I've got to go commit an illegal act in order to do this. And if I get caught with this, I'm going to jail for sure if I get caught with this gun. Mm-hmm. The person who's raping my daughter is probably going to go walk free. But if I have a gun, I'm definitely going to prison. I mean,
that is so backwards, man.
And that's why what really frustrates me here in the States of people that I talk to, I could quote them. I mean, I'm a native-born American, but I literally spent the first 18 years of my life in Europe, and so I kind of have like two pretty stark understandings just from experiential perspective. When I came back to the States for college, and fast forward, especially to now, and I listen to people talk about this stuff and have zero comprehension of the stark differences between the United States and basically the rest of the planet. And they have no appreciation, no understanding, and no true knowledge of just the categoric differences. And it just goes over their head, and it just blows my mind. Sandy, I'm sure that probably frustrates you to no end too, being I've been a CEO.
Yeah.
I'm assuming, I'm just going to go out on a limb and guess that given your MOS, you've probably been all over the world.
Yeah, I was Africa. When I was a SEAL teammate, I was Africa and the southern part of Europe, and then on the west coast, part of Asia, off of Indonesia after 9/11, some various places. But I did spend a little time in the UK, work with the SAS, SBS, which were pretty cool guys. A lot of Klepper kayaks and stuff, SDVs. But yeah, it is frustrating because it comes down to some biblical principles too, as well as as Christianity has receded in Europe and secularism has been on the rise for decades. The right to self-defense has been taken away, whereas in the United States, as we see secularism rising, the hue and cry of people shouldn't have guns is also there as well, which is unfortunate. I mean, even Christ gave us the right to self-defense in Luke 22:36. So it's an interesting thing, and the thing of it is, the Revolutionary War was started. The first shots at Lexington and Concord were started over gun control. These guys were marching to pick up the powder and the weapon stores in those two areas. So, our entire history is based, the first shots were fired over gun control. And anyway, but hey, John, I wanted to ask you, what was your dad doing in the UK?
So my dad was actually retired. He was a battery commander in Vietnam.
Awesome.
He was retired. He actually got shot in the neck. He was his forward observer had gotten killed, and while they were waiting for the replacements, he basically was serving as forward observer and battery commander.
Wow.
And he told me some crazy stories about. Actually, let me rephrase. He told me the same stories over and over again for my entire childhood.
Of course, he did.
Would never tell me any of the good stuff, and then because it is. I mean.
Yeah.
Most people don't share combat stories, right? Yeah. There's a few they'll tell, right? I'm sure you got a few, like one or two little snippets you've told people, and that's it, right?
Yeah, I just tell them the funny ones.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But it's kind of ironic. When I was contemplating joining, I was very close to signing up. We had 9/11 time. I was a freshman in college, and my grandfathers, both my grandfathers were World War II. One of them Korea, and then my dad Vietnam.
Wow.
And they basically sat me down and were like, look, if you decide you want to go, we'll of course have your back all the way. But if you have the opportunity to avoid having to experience combat, do so. And they shared some stuff with me, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, I'm sure your dad probably had a bad taste in his mouth about Vietnam because we won every battle, and Congress ended up losing it, and which is so unfortunate.
I mean, heck, we completely annihilated them. I mean, that was my dad's told me some of the stuff about the rules of engagement from Vietnam. It was just nuts.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Absolutely stacked. So part of the reason he got shot was So I guess they were trying to. He's on a helicopter flying around. It's so ironic. So part of the rules of engagement, the guys on the ground weren't necessarily allowed to strike first, right? So if they had identified an area where they thought the enemy was, the guys usually would forward observers. In this context, my father serving as one, they would fly over the jungle. And zip around, and occasionally would drop things out of the helicopter, and then if they got shots fired back at them, then they would call in the artillery, and then once they dropped, once the batteries had fired and kind of broken things up a little bit, then the men they were on the ground in the jungle would swoop in and and do their thing, right?
Yeah,
that's dirty.
Yeah, it's recon by fire. It's what it is.
But you think about that. Sometimes my dad told me some stuff sometimes we could even see them down there. I could see them from the helicopter, and we had to fly low and zip over to get them to shoot at us before we could fire in. And it's how imbecilic is that? But I guess they were flying. Some guys had gotten pinned down, and they were flying in the helicopter to like scoop them up, and a Viet Cong shot, and I guess the bullet went through the fuselage of the helicopter and struck my dad directly in the neck. And
Jeez Louise.
Crazy. I mean, straight up, just God kept my father alive, because he told me the story about like the helicopter pilot was amazing. He flew the helicopter back to the base with one hand, and the other hand he kept my dad from bleeding out.
Wow.
And so I mean, think about that. Like
Yeah.
one hand helicopter, the other one keep him from bleeding. I mean, my dad's got a scar. I'm talking like the bullet hole is literally on his neck, and he's got a scar from behind his ear all the way down to his chest.
God bless
They
him.
cut him open to get out. But yeah, my dad was paralyzed, neck down for like a year. The bullet apparently lodged in between two vertebrae and was like pressed against his spine. And so it's like if it hadn't gone through the fuselage, obviously he would have died. I mean, it would have kept going, but it was just enough of
It must have been like a 14.5 or something, some small crew serve weapon to be that go through the fuselage and then do that kind of damage. Holy cow!
Yep. Yeah, it's kind of nuts. And he had some nerve damage and such, but until he got much older, you couldn't really tell now he's in his 70s now. You can kind of see like where.
So is he working on a staff over in the UK?
Oh, so the original question you asked me. So he got medically retired, and then he ended up becoming a contractor for the Air Force.
Okay.
For DoD, and then did computer networking and such. But yeah, they flew over from San Antonio and arrived in the UK 10 days before I was born. So I was literally they flew over. I was popped out. I joked that if I ever ran for president and they tried to argue that I wasn't a natural born citizen, I'll say, well, not only was I conceived in San Antonio, Texas, in any other context, they would not have let me fly. And I would have been born in San Antonio rather than popped out in England.
Now, how funny is that? Because that's where my son and my daughter-in-law live there. He's not in the military. He works for Connor's group, but his wife's father is the J2 for AFRICOM, and they were stationed in Lackland for years and years and years. But Hillary's, my daughter-in-law's grandfather, was an O-2 bird dog pilot in Vietnam, and he used to do that recon by fire, flying low over the jungle just to draw fire. Then they'd fly in fast movers on top of these guys. But he had some pretty hairy stories. Real deep faith, though. The guy has real deep. In fact, the first time that my son met his granddaughter, he got sat down and said, "Tell me your theology." Like, okay, all right. So
it's pretty interesting. My dad actually talks about how like he had as a kid, he'd become a Christian and all that kind of stuff. But he's like, I look back on that moment of truth in the jungle of Vietnam, and it changed his life. I mean, obviously in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was that, of course, obviously you're facing your mortality, obviously, is one facet of it. But then also the component of like, so this bullet basically the only way possible to hit me and not kill me, right?
Yeah.
It gets slowed down just enough for I don't die. And then somehow I've got a man holding my neck together, my jugular together, so I don't bleed out in a flight back. Well, he's somehow managed to apply this thing with one hand and keep me from bleeding out.
It was all random chance, man. It was all random chance.
all random chance. Yeah. I mean, and then he's paralyzed from the neck down for a year, and then is able to recover and like walks. And I mean, looking at him, you wouldn't be able to tell that at one point he was paralyzed from the neck down from being shot in the neck. I mean, it's crazy.
We all come to Christ in different ways, brother.
That's right.
Yep.
I mean, I'm glad I don't have to go through that to come to Christ, but yeah.
Well, it's the interesting thing. I think I think where the world is heading right now. I mean, I have this weird feeling that we're heading towards, and we're on, going 100 miles an hour towards some kind of conflict. Yeah, and by that, and I don't mean just in the places a lot of the places where you were, Sandy.
No, I
Where it
no,
was
I
all
know
kind of
exactly.
contained in these little bubbles of like, oh, and then people like myself and living over here in the States are like, oh, we live in these little bubbles of like, oh, it's fine. There's
Yeah.
nothing crazy going on in the world. At the same time, you're over, who knows what you guys are dealing with.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I tell people, and my wife and I are fairly young Christians, only 7 years, even though I got told to go to seminary, but that's another story. But you take a look at the Old Testament, and it's just no pun intended, a testament to the rise and fall of the Israelites in how they were punished and then redeemed and then rebuilt the temple, or built the temple first, then were punished, redeemed. And we're headed towards something like that right now. God has taken his hand off of this country. I truly believe that. And we're headed for something bad. Now, I've had one or two pastors tell me that, end times are here. And I have listened to, I think, if you've ever heard of Gary Hamrick, he's at Cornerstone Chapel here in Leesburg, Virginia. Very, very good. But he has been pointing to some signs that are very, very interesting. And, now a lot of people have said that before, but the way that the Supreme Court has turned down all of this evidence, the way that all these judiciaries have turned everything down, there is so much demonic activity going on. It's incredible. And God bless us. It's I hope everybody's well armed, because it's going to get rocky.
I agree with you. I mean, when you have I never expected Justice Roberts to. I think he's compromised. Personally,
I absolutely believe that.
I think he's been compromised.
Was that the Bush appointee?
Yes, Chief Justice John Roberts. I think he's been compromised. No, it may have been before, but I think he's been for sure. It's been compromised since 2015.
I would agree. There's something going on now. Somebody pointed out the other night that his name was on Epstein's logs, and that he has already debunked that. I don't know, man, and it may not be Epstein, but there's something going on. Somebody has something, or they're threatening these guys clandestinely with a lot of things, because there are so many guys that are rolling over on this entire set of fraud that we've seen. It's just very disheartening to me. But
and this is why I'm very, I think, in line with what you're saying of we may be heading somewhere.
Yeah,
it make it interesting, because I mean, at this point, the people, I think, well, let me put it this way. I think there's enough people who are not willing to concede that are aware of what is blaringly obvious.
Oh, absolutely.
And at this point, it's okay, Supreme Court, you're compromised. Fair enough. Okay, courts of different states, you're compromised. Fair enough. Okay, legislatures, you don't have the balls to do what needs to be done. Fair enough. However, you have, and this is a sidebar, but I think from a strategic standpoint, one of the things that may actually backfire on the left is the way they've gone all in with with Corona and the lockdowns. I think they may have actually miscalculated, and they've put people in a position where they're not going to concede and just be like, well, life's good, everything's fine, whatever, this sucks. I don't know how I feel about this, but things will just go on. It won't be quite as good, but it's going to be basically normal. Now you put people in a position where it's about survival.
Yeah. Well, the COVID is actually, it's contributed to the conditioning that they've sought for years, and compliance with orders from governors that are not necessarily legal.
Yeah.
And, even Jane Fonda has said that COVID was a gift to the left with respect to the mail-in ballots and other such things. So it has been a factor in that, as the left likes to say, don't let a crisis go to waste, and they surely did not. Now, that said, a lot of the ballot manipulation, the mail-in ballots, that was done 2 years ago. But here's an interesting thing that I was listening to a lawyer the other night was the executive order that Trump signed in September of 2018.
You're talking about the foreign interference?
Yeah, 13848. And I'm hearing rumblings. I get some of these guys on LinkedIn sending me these messages of one guy, and I love the guy to death. He's a very Christian guy, and he's always sending me these messages of guys doing routine field exercises. He said, the military's getting ready, man. The military's guys, dude, that is a regularly scheduled exercise. I'm just relax. Yeah. Now, that said, I'm also hearing rumblings from people in federal law enforcement, which has piqued my interest a little bit. So I don't know. Things are going to be very, very interesting for the next 3 weeks. But
I tell you what I'm intrigued by is the the reports on I think there's the stories I've seen on it was that it was a Delta team in Germany.
Well, that was not the information that I've got was very scanty on it. My understanding was that there's a certain group of guys who are. I got to be careful what I say here. Yeah, I just had my TS clearance adjudicated again today for the next 6 years. There is a quick reaction force that does things from the area and this quick reaction force was on standby to go and help those guys in Benghazi and told to stand down, which is another story.
They were up in those guys were in Italy at the time, weren't they?
They got to Italy and were told to stand down. Yeah. So, well, there's a quicker reaction force in Venona, but there's one up in Stuttgart that's you can call them Delta Light if you want to call them, but my understanding is that it wasn't even them; it was some group that went in and seized those servers. I have not heard anything more about it. General McInerney says that a couple of guys got killed. I haven't heard anything about that in the groups. So I'm very curious as to what really happened. I think
me too. I watched an interview with him, and he was talking about it, and he made the direct statement that the guys that were defending the facility were CIA.
Yeah,
or at least CIA assets, and whether or not they're like, as you and I know, there's all sorts of different where they might be coming from and who their technical black op, or black box employers are. But that part really struck me, and I'm like, if that is true, and it wouldn't surprise me if it is true, I wouldn't be surprised at all. It could be
sure. I mean, the CIA's got stations all over the place, and they, the Frankfurt is just a station that is there. It's a logistics hub, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. But their server farms are there, and so when the initial reports came out that said that they had gone in and seized things out of Seidel and Dominion or whatever in Spain, well, that wasn't true. They went right to servers that they knew may have had that information on it. And that's straight out of open source information.
Yeah, so when you say all over the place, do you mean globally or you mean in the US?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean the CIA is every place, man.
Wow. Oh yeah, okay.
Oh yeah, there's all sorts of stuff. Things we don't even think about that are it's way bigger than it's bigger than even in the movies. In terms of the level of at least potential influence.
Yeah. It seems like the CIA seems like a child with just crummy hands with just sticking their hands in every cookie jar imaginable.
I tell you something I hope at some point gets unveiled. The truth gets unveiled, and that's Benghazi. I mean, I was watching that stuff live when it was going down, and I remember when after the fact, when I forget, was it the colonel? I think it was a colonel that was publicly just going on an absolute rant about being told to stand down. And it's like, we could have been there. I knew from my time, going and visiting Alviano and some of their stuff when I was there. I mean, it's like, they can get the. I mean, we're not. People here in the States think like, oh, going to Africa from Europe. From their perspective, it's like thinking, oh, we're going to like South America. Like you couldn't get there in time. It's like, no, folks, this is like hopping in a plane and flying from Chicago to New York, like or less, potentially less. If you're coming from, depending on where you're leaving Italy from, I mean, you're talking about 30 minutes maybe.
If those guys had cut in on the burners, it would have been about an hour flight to get there, and then they could have had tankers up in the air to refuel them. But at least they could have done a show of force down on the avenues in Benghazi and at least tried to break up the mobs. And that whole thing was just insane. And if you go back and listen to Tig and some of the other guys, they were screaming for help. And but the whole thing of Benghazi, of Chris being there, was shady to begin with.
Yep.
And
and the fact that they had prior to this had been requesting reinforcements.
Yeah, there was
prior.
Over 100 cables he sent and said, but the answer they always get back. And the State Department's a strange animal. I mean, it's very, very, very liberal, over there. So, and they had asked for strength for reinforcement on the security compound, and it never came because they didn't want it to look like a militarized compound. Well, that's pretty stupid. Then why are you going to put an American ambassador there? You got to harden the facility a little bit. So.
Yeah. So what's the protocol for declassification besides the U.S. president just saying, "Oh, this is declassified now"? Like, is it?
Oh, president can declassify anything he wants. That's his privilege. He has to get concurrence, usually from the originating authority, whoever that is. But he has overall classification or declassification authority.
Is he the only one, or is there some
No. Originators can declassify documents. When you classify a document, it depends on the level of confidentiality, secret, top secret, whatever it is, or it's way up in the sensitive compartmentalized information, which is called SCI, but which is usually 25 years. For 25 years you can't declassify it. So number one, you'd have to go back to the originator, whoever made the document, and then the agency that stamped the approval of the classification. But the president can declassify anything he wants. He has that authority, and that's just the end of that game right there.
So is it like the normal pattern of like, okay, let's declassify this because we can't hold anyone accountable because everyone that is responsible for X, Y, Z.
Well, I mean, just remember what happened the day after Benghazi. Susan Rice went on there and said it was some poor guy who put out a video, which was complete crap. They had warning indications in every embassy that something was going to happen on 9/11. It was the 10th anniversary of 9/11.
Yeah,
and
it was categoric propaganda that came out of the Obama.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, that woman should have gone to jail for that.
I tell you what freaks me out is that she's currently been. The Joe Biden is going to bring her back into the White House.
Yeah,
of course.
That freaks me out. That woman, okay, let's put this in context. That woman was directly responsible for more illegal unmasking of American U.S. citizens than anybody else.
Yeah, she and
she was the instigator of that.
Yeah, the UN it was a lady. She had I can't remember her name. Long red hair, but she was the UN ambassador for a while. But she did some of the unmasking as well, so that the administration core would not get into trouble. So,
yep. Well, then of course Susan Rice did a bunch of CYA.
Yeah,
it was. Who was that woman? I know you're talking about.
Yeah. Her name's on the tip of my tongue. I can't think of it. It's Sarah.
Samantha Power.
Samantha Power. There you go. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of that. The number of people that are coming back in is interesting. Sidebar. Did you see the story that broke today from the former CEO of Overstock in relation to Clinton?
No.
Okay, so today, this was like a couple hours ago. I think it was probably this is like maybe 6:30. The former CEO of Overstock.com, and she was the founder, he's a billionaire, came out publicly and stated that he was involved in an $18 million bribe to Hillary Clinton. And it was initiated by Barack Obama. And the intent was to have her under control. They expected her to win. And the intent was to have control over the administration.
It doesn't surprise me.
And it didn't surprise me either. But he's coming out publicly on this. 18 million, that he was the facilitator.
Yeah, it was probably Soros money.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's a billionaire himself.
Yeah.
So there's no telling. It could have been his money.
Yeah.
That's
So I got a split, fellas. It's good talking to you. John, when's your next gig?
Like next debate?
Yeah.
Tenants might be doing one Saturday night over on MDD.
Okay.
Not 100% on that one, but in talks right now.
Cool. Good deal. All right, brothers.
All right, great talking with you, Sandy. Have a great night.
All right, God bless.
All right.
Ernesto, welcome to the stream. I think it's the first time you've been on here. What's going on?
Hey, what's up? Not much. I just looking through live stuff on YouTube, getting used to it. So just seeing, what I can see, what topics and stuff.
Right on. Well, what obviously we've been discussing some current event stuff. What kind of topics do you want to discuss?
Oh, no matter. If you're talking about current stuff, then with COVID and masks, that's something. It's been interesting.
Oh, yeah.
So are you for or against mandatory masks?
So I'm anti. I would be against masks just from the things that I've seen. I would just believe from the things that I've seen in person and all this. They're using COVID. I know COVID is a real thing, but they're using that like a fear thing, because when you're scared, when you're fearful, you tend to do things that you're just scared. You want to protect. You don't want to die. No. So saying that a mask is going to help, wearing it, it's you have to wear it anywhere you go. From seeing how history is. History repeats itself. This is a easy step for an example of what tyranny is heading towards tyranny, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I would completely agree with you. I mean, at this point, when you pick up a mask and it literally at the store, right, and it literally says is not medical grade. It does not have it literally does not have the capacity to stop a virus.
Yeah, right.
So the label on the thing that I am being forced to put on my face before I walk into this store, that per the delineation on the tag it's clearly advertised, it will not protect me.
Right.
But I have to wear this in order to walk in.
And the thing is, it says it in the box. It says it's not able to prevent COVID. It's a new thing now, since they want to make sure they don't get in trouble.
Yeah, they don't get sued because
Right.
of all the false advertisement with the media.
Well, I think the point you were making about the fear of tyranny is the irony is I think they're less concerned about lawsuits and more concerned about government power mongers shutting.
Oh, right, big time. What's funny is that I don't know if you guys know it, but during the plague, I bought this mask, like a bird mask shape. During the plague, they used to wear this, and so I was like, you know what? If I gotta go into the store with a mask, let me wear this. And just because of how serious it is, how a mask can scare off COVID. So I was like, you know what? I have this thing where
It's scary.
Right. It is creepy, but I wore the mask in the mall, And eventually the cops came to me and said, "Hey, you can't wear that mask. Here's a mask," And he's like, and I should have said yes, but they were asking, is that for medical purposes? And I should have said yes. Moments like that, I regret saying, regret.
Yeah, that's weird because I'm not trying to dox myself, but I'm a quote unquote essential worker, and so there was like customers, like a family walked in with literally like Power Ranger and like a Power Ranger mask and Spider-Man mask on, like the actual like the costume like mask. And like no one said anything to them. Just walking in there.
But that's something.
So it's weird that they stop you.
Yeah, the cops they didn't say any reason to it, but they just said you can't wear it, and they provided a mask for me. They had like masks, and that's the thing. I mean, if it's so, the thing is it's not consistent. This whole
Not.
The thing about it is that there was a church that I know, that my church is connected to another church, and that church was so our church, for example, was open during COVID. I know it was during COVID. Never once did anyone got COVID. Never once during the whole COVID season. We didn't do no 6 feet. We didn't have any masks on, and you can see it there. And again, one of the major things is the church that we were connected to, they had outside service, so they had the cars outside. The people were in cars. Nobody could have got COVID from like that. Anyways, all that being said, they had an outside service, and the mayor of that town made a threat to them in a letter stating, "Hey, if you don't close down your church service, then how you call it? Then we'll fine you $1,000." And eventually the pastor did stick with it and was prepared to go to court for this. And eventually the mayor backed off. But that was what happened. Sorry.
No, I was saying like some people would like to play on the ignorance of like the population, because they were like pretend to have powers and authorities that they know they don't have, but if you call them on their bluff sometimes, and they'll actually back down. But
I tell you so here in Nashville, right? So Tennessee, pretty conservative state overall. Nashville, Memphis are deep blue bubbles in a sea of red. And I've had a decent amount of activity in politics here in Nashville for the last like 7-8 years. And our current mayor, John Cooper, good Lord, he is the epitome of little man, and both physically and mentally. It's amazing. It's stunning how sometimes the stereotypes are just like fulfilled. But anyway, this little bastard, excuse my French, is just absolutely annihilating my city, right? So Nashville, one of the fastest growing cities in the United States. We were hot, just going gangbusters, right? Awesome tourist city, healthcare city. I mean, things are just going like, can it get any better, right? These idiots have somehow, even before this, black swan of 2020, these idiots were somehow managing to blow through stupid amounts of capital. And just like the tax money is just going through the roof, increasing. I mean, the tax revenue increased almost 40% in 5 years. Just think about that, right? And they have raised property tax 34%, 34 freaking percent. While they keep like shutting down like major components of the city economically, and then they have the cojones to be like, if we don't comply and like provide, pay all this money and stuff, that equals him. He will have to fire. I believe it was 541 cops will have to be fired if we don't comply with all these tax increases. And I'm just like, and all these people were like kowtowing, and I'm like, I did a rant online about a different channel, and I'm like, okay, let's just say I was on a rather anger-laced diatribe to a couple members of our city council, and I'm like, you know what? Here's what I got to say to you. I call your bluff. I literally dare you to fire cops. Do it. None of y'all have the balls. I dare you. Go tell your constituents that you fired 541 cops. Do it. I dare you.
It's like
You're going to make these public little tweets and your press conferences. Well, if we don't do this, it's going to cost your 541 cops are going to be fired. Really? You didn't.
that's like
You haven't put a single city employee on furlough in the entirety of 2020. You haven't fired a single one. You haven't had pay reductions for any of them. You've actually given pay raises to city employees. And now you're going to say that you're going to fire cops and firefighters? I call your bluff. I call bullshit. I dare you. I literally dare you to do this because you're shutting down our jobs. Like I had a tourist business, right? I was making I was prepared going into tourist season. I would have made ridiculous amounts of money, like just money hand over fist for 8 months with the tourist market in Nashville, right? That all got shut down. Like my business completely implodes, right? And the amount of money I was making compared to what other people were making was nothing, right? And I was doing well. My business completely annihilated. I had to refund all this money for Airbnb. I'm getting ready to sell my house because I can't afford to live here anymore, right? This is what's happened. Like my life is imploding, right? And I'm not saying it for like, it's just like, hey, it's me and a ton of other people. We're all going, people across the world are going through this crap. And it's like, this is so avoidable. Like this is totally avoidable.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, it might not have been as good as it was last year, but why am I going from good to literally negative? Like I am okay with a reduction, but a negative? No. Like you've literally forbade me from being able to make money. Wow. Like, no. And when I look at all these different folks that are, here in Nashville that are just being, utterly annihilated. Their businesses are just being crushed. And their liabilities, like thankfully for mine, I had some flexibility on my overhead stuff. So I was able to escape a lot of that. But some of these folks, I got a friend of mine who owns a bar on Broadway. His rent is over $100K a month.
It's ridiculous.
Okay. So they were shut down for a couple months, zero revenue.
I don't know, it didn't shut down, I'm assuming.
We're talking a couple $100,000. like, can you imagine going in the hole a couple $100,000 a month?
No, I cannot imagine.
It's like, oh, cool. And they had bought the bar a year before. They put up a bunch of money to buy the rights to it and all that kind of stuff. Things are finally starting to rock and roll, making some money. Like, okay, they just recouped their initial investment, right? And then it's like now they're hemorrhaging money and not even being able to come close to cover. Of course, they were shut down and getting zero revenue, and now they've reopened, but the revenue is so small. It's like they're still hemorrhaging money, and it's mind bending when I think about like what's happening. And Nashville is not nearly as bad as like New York and Jersey and LA, all these different cities. I cannot imagine how these business owners must be feeling of just like I'm being pulled around like a puppet. And then being told that I don't actually have the privilege and the rights to be able to have some semblance of control of my own destiny. I don't know.
It seems like all psychological warfare.
What's up, everyone?
Welcome back, Will.
Oh,
Yeah.
too bad.
Yeah, well, I've just finished talking with Saul. He's taking a little break, taking care of his mother, and after we're gonna be hopping into part 2 of biology.
Oh, nice. Awesome.
Yep. You like my name, John?
I see that.
Yep. Oh, you forgot to add it's Diet Coke.
I'm coming to claim my $100. The 15-year-old's about to destroy the genetic code.
Well, just for fun, folks, because I just can't resist.
But it is not a code. It's a chemical. It's deoxyribonucleic acid. It's an acid. I don't understand why you think it's a code. DNA is no more of a code than Diet Coke and regular Coke.
He can't be serious.
That will never get old.
But doesn't these guys actually study the genetic code?
That's literally like that's practically being anti-science at this point. And, he's becoming the thing He's like rejects Christians to be.
Okay, so the clip I just played came from his quote unquote response video to one of mine, and I responded, did a formal rebuttal, yada yada, nothing. My debate that I had with him ended up happening after I couldn't resist and ended up doing a formal challenge. But the reason I formally challenged was a couple months after the Diet Coke and regular Coke thing, and I just completely annihilated it in my response video. I came across another debate, or a debate he was in, and he said this, and I was like, it's where I couldn't resist. I had to challenge him.
One of the facets of Christianity is obsolete, specifically the fundamentalist view of Genesis. So, let's see. Let me go through we started talking about genetic code, and what I have to say about genetic code is that we can interpret it as genetic code, like as code, as information, but inherently DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid. It's a chemical. This chemical reacts with certain other chemicals in various systems in order to produce different proteins. This is akin to like Diet Coke and regular Coke. I wouldn't say that Diet Coke inherently contains any kind of useful information just because it has a chemical code behind it. The change between Diet Coke and regular Coke doesn't prove anything about the existence of God. So I would just caution the use of genetic code as information and as a way to suggest that we need a creator in order for it to exist. And I guess
This guy's a troll.
No, that's literally a debate he was in.
Why is he doubling down? Just say you're wrong. Just say I made a mistake.
It's so bad.
It's
So I better
hang on. So this, I love this. So this is, let's just say I was rather irritated in when I presented this because I just thought he was a complete idiot. Hang on.
5 like and 41 dislike.
Maddox here. This is a quick pre-response video reply to Godless Engineer, who the other day decided to attack one of my videos on why evolution has become a central component to the new atheist movement and way to circumvent the need for God in order for life to exist. Now, he specifically attacked my core position, which was that the genetic code is a code base and it's a programming language that enables life to exist and is not purely chemical reactions. Ironically, he responded back and said, yes, it was just chemical reactions, and basically that I didn't know what I was talking about. So, given the fact, Godless Engineer, that you conceded some of my later points and comparisons, that it was not a reasonable conclusion that a code base of any kind would be able to come into existence without a intelligent agent existing prior to its execution, before I spend the time to really dive into why you're stunningly ignorant and uneducated in regards to this whole topic, I would like to grant you the opportunity to retract your positions, or I will be forced to embarrass you in regards to your stunning lack of knowledge and how you apparently are part of the brainwashed demographic that is unable to actually read basic literature and comprehend what is actually being put forth, and how something directly entails and is not purely analogous to a computer language. So I look forward to your response. Do you retract, or shall I proceed to embarrass you?
Amen. So I don't get this, guys. Does he just believe that DNA doesn't have any order to proceed to code into amino acid and protein? Did you just believe it just happened by chance, just chemical reaction, just putting itself, just doing that type of stuff? I mean, dude, literally in order to code, to go from AAA to code into protein and all that type of stuff, you need to go to a decoder, encoder, encoder. I mean, doesn't this guys understand basic science?
Well, this
I,
is why
I guess not.
this is why I state, and the title of tonight's stream is, does atheism cause adult mental retardation? I mean,
Yes.
jobless engineer has a bachelor's in computer science. He has a master's in software engineering.
Yeah. Let me.
Either he is a freaking idiot,
He's being
or
willing.
he has a significant amount of mental retardation in the context of determining existence. Or at a minimum, being able to contemplate, like, I mean, if you're going to sit there and come up, well, let's get real. He compares code in the genetic code to Diet Coke and regular Coke. I mean, at this point, if that's not,
You cannot
I
get
don't know
more
what it is.
stupid.
I mean,
Maybe I should quote Perry Marshall. DNA is not only a code; it is a literal code, and that's why I use the word code because Perry Marshall just destroyed it.
Well, here's the funny part, Will. So in my, it's a long video, but in my response video to him originally, the videos you've seen of Perry Marshall and of the Royal Society and different things, like, I went into great detail, just completely establishing, like, okay, it's a freaking code, folks. Like, okay, so he saw that stuff. He then doubles down on it again, right? And that's why when he doubled down on it the second time, in that little debate clip I showed you, that's what led me to issue my debate challenge. Because
Maybe
it's like, at what point are you? I mean, it's well.
I mean,
I
I like
know what's
how
going
we
on.
all come to dislike your video.
I think
We can hear
his brain is like evolving over time. I think that's I think he gained that that's where he gained that wisdom from.
Premise one: the pattern in DNA is a code. Premise two: all code we know of origin or design. Therefore, DNA is designed by an intelligent design. I mean, it's just simple as that. You don't need to have like a PhD to understand that. If you see a code, you know it didn't produce by chance. Someone put that code to work in that way. I mean, just how can they not be just logical a bit?
What do you think about the argument of, like, was it evolution is the coder, or I guess natural selection is the coder? Because I've been hearing that.
Okay, so the natural selection piece is, there's so many reasons that's a completely dumb explanation, but okay, natural selection doesn't even exist until there is replication of the system. So when we're talking about the source origin, natural selection is not a variable to be put into the equation, because that process isn't in play yet. So you have to account for how that can you can get to that stage, and to get to that stage, you already need to have the system in place.
Yeah, well, and
so even if they try to, like, dumb it down, like, oh, it was a more simple system, it was a more simple code. I'm like, I don't care. It doesn't matter. It doesn't change the fundamental requirements of the code. Like, oh, cool, the code wasn't quite as complicated. Awesome. Like, whatever. It has absolutely nothing to do. It's so mind bending. John Lang, what's up, man? Welcome to the late night stream. What's going on? How are you doing, brother?
Got a little bit of a stutter right now. Am I coming through?
Yep, you're good.
I can't hear you guys very well. Probably fix here. I think I got a software update I got to get. So you guys are talking about godless again. I was thinking about chiming in a couple nights ago. You were talking to Top Dog.
Oh, that was painful.
Oh.
Yeah, we just look at the real life and we conclude that evolution is true. I mean, he doesn't understand that that's literally what science is, looking at the natural world. I wonder when he's going to get that.
Yeah, what were you saying, John?
I actually can't even hear you guys. I might have to get a software update or something. Why don't you keep talking, and if it clears up, I'll chime in.
We can hear you just fine.
Yeah, are you on your computer, John?
I can't hear you guys at all. It's super choppy.
Oh, maybe your microphone.
Probably on his phone.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to go back. Saul's probably gonna get back.
What happened to Ernesto? Did he leave?
Yeah, I think he dropped out a couple minutes ago.
Yeah, I know he dropped out. Let's see him.
Yeah.
I was enjoying our conversation.
Oh,
Yeah, he didn't say anything. He just dropped.
yeah, and the problem that I have with those like who says that DNA is not a code, then if it's not a code, explain me how does it process then? I mean, how are you able to code from AAA and AGTC into literal amino acid and protein? How does that work if it's not a code? I mean, you need an encoder, decoder, encoder.
Here's part of the problem, I think, Will, is so I'm assuming you kind of followed some of the things I was suggesting. You've actually been reading.
Yeah,
you've actually been reading about information theory basics, right?
yeah. I have a whole folder that I.
No, I know you. I'm kind of speaking for the audience too. Like, I know you've been reading it. So a lot of the things that you've heard me talk about, now that you've been starting to read about what is information theory, what is a communication system, like what is the processes that have to occur, so forth. A lot of these things I'm sure that you might not have understood as in greater detail when you first started hearing them are probably making a lot of sense now. You're just like, oh, well, that's what they're talking about, right?
Hey, Sal.
So Sal, I hear you're being a late night YouTube tutor.
Yes. I wanted to come in and just congratulate you on 1,000 subscribers. I just saw it. Well done, sir.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I hit that earlier today.
Well, I screwed up an earlier video with Emery, who's in his image, and I recapitulated it as best as I could with Will. We're gonna post the recording that I made with Will sometime tomorrow.
And which subject were you guys talking about tonight?
It was the rhetorical question: Dr. Dan, Kent Hovind, or P.Z. Myers? Who would you have as your biology teacher?
Oh man.
The unanimous choice was Dr. Dan. And this was a rhetorical question because Emery, like myself, have gone through secular schools, and Will may be going to a secular school at some point. And really, it's just really not to take that question too literally, but it's the challenge of presenting ourselves to non-believers to have them teach us so that we could further the creationist case. And that raises some complications. And that's all the show's about. So,
gotcha. I gotcha. That makes sense. And you guys are going to do another stream here in a little bit on more on biological systems, right?
It's also going to be recorded, and I don't want to. I try very hard not to conflict when you have the stage. And so we're just going to record it. And then it also is a little bit less stressful for me in case mom needs something. I can just kind of edit out or pause the recording. And because I don't like doing live shows. But I just wanted to drop in and congratulate you, John. And I wanted to say it's been a fun year with you.
Absolutely. Same here. I appreciate that. Yeah, folks, make sure anybody in the audience who doesn't know Sal, head on over to Sal. Make sure you post your link in the chat. Sorry, late night. Reasons
Evidence and Reasons.
Evidence and Reasons. Yep. And great content over there. Awesome stuff that Sal's actually been releasing a lot of interviews with high level academics on a variety of topics, as well as giving awesome lectures. Was it my days are blurring together? Was it last night when you did the one on Miller's Limit?
Yes, that was surprisingly popular, and we had Dr. Dan on the show once, and then Raw Matt, and then that's
right. You guys did the.
I had one on eukaryotic evolution with Otangelo, and either tomorrow or sometime this week, I'm actually co-hosting a show with Erica on molecular phylogeny. So again, this is reflecting what both Emery and I had to go through. We could be like the only creationists in a class of like 100, but we have to find a way to to work and learn with people who are not creationists, and they may be your lab partner or project partner. And tomorrow's going to be kind of a live example of that. Erica and I, she knows stuff that I don't know, and I know stuff that she doesn't. And so we, by mutual agreement, I said, okay, we have a mutual stake in discussing molecular phylogeny. So,
Hey, so on that whole molecular phylogeny thing, you should, I think you should ask her how, if you guys act, well, actually, I'll pose this question to you. Do you think that the current models of phylogeny actually represent the multiplexing code layers of the genetic information that is required for life to exist?
no, not in terms of the eukaryotic evolution. And that's where I'm, she and I would definitely disagree. The ironic thing is, and this is not well acknowledged, creationists need molecular phylogeny to resolve things like mitochondrial Eve, Y chromosomal Adam, all sorts of migrations. And we use exactly the same software, like Mega, and I'm going to be talking about Mega, to do this. It's exactly the same software suite that evolutionists have built. We're going to leverage it to help support the creationist model. So it's not like I'm suddenly being a turncoat. This is stuff that Rob Carter, Daniel Jeanson would use.
Oh no, I wasn't suggesting that in the slightest. The I was saying it more in the context of the type of information they're arguing has mutated into existence.
Well, see, this is
versus the capability already being in place, and we're watching correct me if I'm wrong on this. What it really boils down to is we're almost looking at the data in the literal antithesis of order, right?
Exactly.
They're claiming that it started with basically nothing, and over time and through heredity, you've ended up at where we are now. And we're stating it's at least I know I am. It's literally the antithesis. We started with more data, and now we have less.
And there's another twist to this, is that, and it was with eukaryotic evolution, for these a lot of these phylogenies assume, like if for universal common ancestry, that the mutations were random. And I demonstrated if we take that fundamental assumption, which is used a lot in phylogeny, if we take that fundamental assumption, it won't make something as coordinated as the eukaryote with all the multiple codes. And I gave an example with the RPS3 protein or the topoisomerase. I said, they're like 7 multiple overlapping codes, not necessarily overlapping, but there have to be 7 simultaneous codes to make this thing work. And a random mutation is not going to do this, and neither will natural selection, because if it's not there to begin with, it's dead. And so the creationist view of phylogeny is, yes, the mutations after the creation are random and they're degrading our genome, but we can use that data then to infer common ancestry. So
I think one of the other, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think one of the other major component in terms of the differences of the data interpretation is if you're looking at the heredity that can be derived from the phylogeny models and you're doing it inside of, say, families, it makes total sense.
Yep, exactly. You got it.
The second you try to jump it over into a different family, then it doesn't. And not only does it not make sense, the data doesn't make sense either.
Yep.
It requires these massive jumps from their own data. Am I correct on that?
I wouldn't say massive jumps, but you are correct. It won't. What they don't address is they assume because it looks tree-like, and I definitely will say I see that tree-like structure in individual proteins. Now, the problem is between proteins, the trees disagree, and that is problematic for evolution. But within each protein, you will see some sort of tree. And but you hit the nail on the head. You can't use the phylogeny to argue that there's macroevolution. That's circular reasoning. And the way that it's fought, and that's why I had that post with Otangelo, uh, is to go to the hardware, the hardware arguments, and say you're going to kill the organism if you try to evolve it in small steps, because it's going to be lethal. And to that end, RJ Downer showed up on my channel, and he just started trash talking. He said, "You know so little about developmental biology and so forth." I responded, "I'll debate you on eukaryotic evolution, and we'll see if you're,
Okay, so if that debate happens, I am going. So lately, folks, just if you haven't been aware of this, I've been being extraordinarily prophetic when it comes to predicting outcomes in debates lately. So I'm just going to go ahead and be a prophet temporarily. And should the debate in question between Sal and RJ Downer occur, it is 100% guaranteed that within 25 minutes of, well, Sal kind of starts off slow. So let's say we'll up it to like 35 minutes. Sal will be annihilating this dumbassery that's going to be coming out of RJ Downer's mouth. And it is guaranteed that once that happens, he will do a hard pivot and start talking about bones in the dirt and fossils. It is guaranteed. There has not been a single debate I've watched of RJ Downer, whereas he begins to become annihilated. He does not do, it doesn't matter whether the topic is remotely relevant to bones in the dirt. He will 100% pivot over. So what do you think about the fossil records? And it's guaranteed. Guaranteed.
And I'll respond, I'm not falling for that trap.
Oh,
Yeah.
But
I mean, really, that's changing the subject. I mean, I'll talk. I said, RJ, I got two things to say about RJ. And he gave me, to his credit, he gave me a straight answer. And maybe I'll look at it at my channel, but just briefly, he was just trash talking. I said, I'll debate you on eukaryotic evolution. And I'll show that you don't know as much about this as you pretend to know. He didn't even respond. It's like silence. So if he comes up and trash talks again, I'm going to say, I'm going to debate you on eukaryotic evolution. That's the bottom of the phylogenetic tree. You cut that off, universal common ancestry is done. But go on.
Oh, hey, Dr. Saul, I have a question for you. So, like, regarding, I guess, evolution in the tree, when they're accounting for like the slow changes, in the wave frequencies over time, are they including the non-coding regions or just only the coding regions of the DNA sequences?
They include everything, but the problem is when they build these phylogenetic trees, a lot of their tools only focus on isolated segments, which is usually the coding regions. Part of the reason for that is these are such big, genomes can be such enormous, it's a lot of computational power. It's easier to do parts of it. So, oh, by the way, so on the Dr. Dan interview, that's where James Downer said these things. I said, quote, I'll debate you on eukaryotic evolution. Are you game? Or should I presume you don't know as much as you pretend to know? Okay, so that's Sal not being so nice this time. All right. You see me when I'm nice to like Dr. Dan and Erica. But RJ just really gets under my skin. I'm just like, dude, I just want a piece of you.
I have to say, folks, I would absolutely, we could make it a pay-per-view. I would love to see Sal Cordova versus RJ Downer in the ring. That would be epic. Continue.
So now he commented, he actually was, I caught his attention when I had that picture of John Stuart Mill, and I opened the show with Dr. Dan on John Stuart Mill. So James Downer, and you can see this on my Evidence and Reasons channel. Just go to evidenceandreasons.org and you'll see a link to the YouTube channel. And James Downer said, I'm a J.S. Mill fan too. And Mill once declared how if a god does stuff that in a human would be considered awful, then the god doing that is awful too. And if God can send him to hell for saying so, quote, then to hell I will go. And I said, James, do you agree with the quote by Mill that, the quote is, then to hell I'll go. That's his preference. And James Downer responded, indeed, I do agree with Mill. So James would happily go to hell, even if there is evidence of a Christian God. So there you have it.
Well, as the title of this stream suggests, does atheism cause adult mental retardation? I mean,
I
it's
think the
a
answer is yes.
well, and
Yeah, I
it's,
mean, we have seen that from Godless. He's the perfect example.
well, it's a very interesting commonality that we're hearing, especially, and again, I'm referring directly to YouTube atheists. I mean, God could appear in front of me and do miracles, and I will still deny that He exists. I mean, at that point, it's like, so God teleported you to Mars, and you're getting to, and then Everest, and then created things that had nothing in front of you, or healed your daughter who's dying, or whatever it is. After you asked for it, it happens. And nope, I'm still not going to believe. Like at that point, okay, you are
You have a
living.
mental problem.
You have atheist fantasyland projection complex, is what that is, and you're doomed. But yeah, it's Mr. Miller. I know you were asking a question. There was something you were asking about on the evolutionary side, right? On the
Oh
allele
yeah.
theory.
Well, I guess let me just get around this. Let me just cut to the chase. So I'm noticing that I noticing that they're no that oh wow, sorry, that they're ignoring the non-coding regions, and I'm assuming it's because it's like too large, but I don't know. I was just fascinated with that part of the sequence, that when it comes to these debates, it gets ignored, because I'm wondering, like, okay, how many of those?
They're technical. Yeah.
Yeah, like,
They're technical reasons. They're technical reasons for this also. A lot of people don't know this, but the sequence readers can only sequence, like, say, I mean, some of the, like the Illumina sequencers could only go, like, say, from like 100 to 100 bases at a time.
oh,
And then,
interesting.
so it'll cut it to pieces, and then it's going to, like a jigsaw puzzle, it's going to estimate how to stitch it back together computationally. And a lot of the non-coding regions are repetitive, and there's just no way to kind of stitch it back together. So we're having better sequencers, like what they call the Pacific Biosequence pack. They're called pack bio machines, but they're very expensive, and they can actually do very long reads. And so it's actually been a technical reason that they're not able to. And then plus there's these huge repetitive sequences, but there's also a problem in phylogeny there, which is pretty technical. Rather than to just try to attack the phylogeny in terms of the sequences they get, I think we have a much stronger case if we just go into the mechanics, like in my eukaryotic talk.
Yeah. I was just curious about that fact, and I also wanted to ask another question as to wouldn't like using like AI to like deal with the repetitiveness, wouldn't that help, or would that be another? I guess that'd be too expensive. Thinking about it.
No, the AI wouldn't help, because some of these sequences are just so long, and they're just we just need better chemistry, so that the DNA that we're examining doesn't break apart in the sequencing process.
Well, and I think another part of the problem too, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Sal, but I think another portion of the problem is for really up until relatively recently, we haven't even been researching those sections of the genome. So we don't even really know what we're looking for in many aspects. And therefore, instead of being able to, because there's identifiers that we're starting to map out, like, oh, well, if we see this, then there's probably something relevant here.
Oh,
so now they're starting to focus on those subsections, but you're talking about literally hundreds of millions of base pairs.
Yes.
So you're having to like figure, okay, we're now seeing a little signal here. Okay, cool. Let's go look at this million. Right.
Oh yes.
I mean,
and
it's a whole nother, I think, as a quick sidebar, Sal, I don't think that, like, as humans, we don't contemplate this, right? Of like, no. We're talking about millions of base pairs, of which we have no idea the level of information that may be being housed therein. And then there may be something of super duper significance that's only a couple hundred of those million that we're looking at that has hyper relevance from a coding perspective, for example. It's nuts.
The DNA bases themselves, there are two things that we're learning. One, I mean, that we've already, there's two or three things I want to mention. First, even if they're repetitive, we're realizing now, that because in eukaryotes, they're chromatin, they're reprogrammable memory. They're basically reprogrammable memory because of the histones and methylation marks. So it's just like, oh, an evolutionist look at a computer chip and look, all the memory elements are constructed the same way. That was really dumb. It's like, no. I mean, we call it a memory bank, and it's because they're identical. You could store things. So it's like a random access memory. The other thing that we're finding out is the 4D nucleome. The conformation is actually information bearing. The three-dimensional way that it's structured. So let's say you just have the base pairs, but there's ways you can transmit code and information by the way you shape things. Now it's in 3D, right? I mean, I could take a string, and by the way you see me knot it up, I could transmit information that way. That's called the 4D nucleome project. And then the third thing, I found this in an obscure discussion on the centromeric regions in chimps and humans. And I'm like, you bozos, you only devoted one paragraph to this. You just bloviated about evolution. There's one paragraph. They said, there's a problem here. And they didn't even, they just, maybe their conscience bothered them, that the centromeric regions are it's like the remap between humans and chimps. It's like, how did that happen? So like what's on chromosome 22 and in the chimp is not the same in, the chromosome in 22 in the human. It's like someone took it and switched it around just almost for fun.
No. We're 98% the same.
So I was just like, will someone pursue this? Why doesn't anyone want to just point this out, that this is, how do you evolve 100 million base pairs?
Yeah.
Well, and here's the thing that really frustrates me from the phylogeny or phylogenetic trees and such is when you're looking at, if you're doing an alignment of this little small section of a function, in this context a gene, I'm like, okay, folks, this is just like if in computer software, if you opened up a folder for this one script that is a very common function, like let's say it's a login function, and literally millions of different web apps or websites use this exact same script for the basics of freaking login function, because why the hell would I recreate this from scratch every time? And then said, oh, all of these other, any software platform that is using the script, the code that's in this little folder for this one function must have evolved from a common ancestor. Like, that's what's being argued. And I'm like, how? Okay, so the rest of the code is dramatically different, or there might be a few other similar scripts that are used, but overall, there's dramatic differences. But because these couple of functions that are extremely common are similar, therefore it must have evolved. Like, you would be considered a complete and utter moron if you made that argument with a straight face. Like, if you came into it and be like, oh my goodness, look at this. Look at this. This is, XYZ plugin version 5.2. Both of them are using it. Must have evolved from a common ancestor. Like, where did you come up with this? This logic it's not logical. It's completely idiotic. In any other context, you would be, like I said, you'd be considered a moron if you came in and made that argument with a straight face. And it blows me away. The passion, which is part of my frustration with all this stuff, Sal, in context of, I know you and I are not differences, but on which focus of hardware and software. I'm like, either one, you can go down either path for me. And I'm like, you're an idiot either way if you claim this stuff came into existence through undirected process and natural selection. Like, you're an idiot. I'm sorry. Continue.
Well, I've got to, I have a tutoring session coming up, and it's just going to be privately recorded. We'll release it. I have another channel that's actually going to be specifically just talking pure science almost. The Evidence and Reasons channel is for Christians to come and hear Christian-oriented creationist stuff. there's a channel that'll be more oriented toward like learning basic, like even arithmetic. Part of this is, even though there are people that are already doing this, I need to relearn this. And one way to do it, just for my own benefit, is to teach it. So, Will, I'll see you on the other.
Yeah, send me an email because I don't have the link over there.
Okay.
It's called Evidence of Science.
Yeah, I'll drop you a link. Here you go.
Evidence and Reasons.
Yeah, evidenceandreasons.org. And then there's a link to my YouTube channel. The website hasn't been built out yet. And then this new other channel that I'm building, it's not advertised or built out yet. But before I say goodbye, John, Merry Christmas and congratulations on 1,000.
Thank you.
And I'd like to say hi to everyone here too. Take care.
Bye.
Good night, Sal.
Good
Or
night.
I'll see you there, Sal. Just to remember you, everyone, DNA is not a code. It is Pepsi and Diet Coke. It is not a code. It's just random chemical.
One of the things that I honestly wanted to, I didn't get into it in my actual debate with him because he was just being such an idiot that I didn't even have to get to this point. But what I really wanted to ask him, and I actually mapped out like a whole logic flow of the questioning of it, but I really wanted to get into I actually Googled it and like looked it up and like found like the original version of, because like the modern version of the chemical formula for Coke and the process for it is, of course, like top secret, right? But the original version that he came up with that actually used cocaine as the sweetener is like public knowledge, right? And I found a video actually of a guy who recreated it minus the cocaine. He like issue is so funny in the video. He issued the caveat like, "Now I am not using. I had to substitute regular sugar for the cocaine." Okay, so any police officer, any drug enforcement that are watching this, I'm not inserting cocaine into this in my Coke recreation. But anyway, what I want to ask these folks is like, okay, let's say it is like Coke or Diet Coke. Here's the process. Here is the stages and the different steps that are required in order for you to make Coca-Cola. Do you think it is remotely plausible without an intelligent agent that these steps could ever occur, no matter how much time you had?
Given it infinite universes and infinite time.
I mean, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And of course, the ultimate irony, and I really wanted to get this stage with Godless Engineer, never did. The number of organic compounds that are required not just organic, biological compounds that are required to make Coca-Cola. It's like, dude, you have to have all these things that need DNA in order for them to exist, in order to make Coke or Diet Coke. How ironic is it that you're claiming that the things that depend upon the code you claim doesn't exist are needed to create the thing that you say is no different than the code? I mean, it's like you can't recreate this stuff. I
mean, minus the intelligent agent that made the Coke in the first place.
Right. Well, absolutely. John, welcome back, man. Is the audio working now?
Yeah, it is functioning now. So I was just kind of wondering, like, you guys get these people on there like, Ogre and Top Dog and Godless Engineer, people like that. Do you ever
in fairness to Ogre, don't put Ogre in the same. Like, Ogre is a pretty nice guy for all. The others are a guy. Yeah, Ogre. If you're listening, we love you, man. You're a nice character. But continue.
Just like maybe saying, okay, we'll take Top Dog. Let's pick on him for a little bit. He kind of comes in and probably was expecting to talk to a bunch of stupid people, didn't know what they're talking about, and kind of found out pretty quickly that he's dealing with a bunch of educated people that know way more than him. And just saying, like, hey, look, Top Dog, clearly you don't know a lot about evolution. Maybe if you just want to write down your top 10 objections to Christianity or theism, why don't you just ask us what we think about that? And, let's just skip the evolution part for now, because he obviously doesn't know anything about it. I don't think that evolution's really always the thing that these guys are, stops them from becoming a theist. That's usually when I talk with people, that's what I kind of encounter.
I can see that. I think there's definitely people that fall in that demographic that you're referring to for sure. That it's neither a here nor there thing for them.
Right. Like I know I was
I,
having
part of the reason that I focus on it personally, and I think there's different stages, right? Of different ways that people should be approached from different individuals, right?
without a doubt.
Because I think that, and part of the reason I've kind of focused on it, especially mine, I focus on evolution, but I focus a little bit more on just the incredulity factor of, and not just from a argument from incredulity, but like a literal, like, are you kidding me? Here is why this is not remotely plausible, in a intellectual sense, for like abiogenesis and like the source of all these things. It's like, because to me, they rely a lot of the anti-theist positions. If you really drill down with them, eventually a lot of times they will concede some of the more philosophical arguments, right, about objective morality and different things. Like they will concede. But then when you really pin them, they try to do a hard pivot to methodological naturalism, and then use that as the final escape for God does not exist. And both for life as well as the universe, right? That's their final escape mecanism. Well, we exist, so all this stuff somehow it just happens somehow, right? And that is why I think at the same time, I agree with what you're saying, 100%.
LPP, can you define that term that you used a moment ago?
Which one? Okay, we talking about methodological naturalism?
Yes, that.
Well, that it's okay. So let's see. Trying to get the exact definition of that.
Yes,
it's the study of it's. There's always cause and effect, but basically it's the reliance on there always being a naturalism explanation for all phenomena, and all that. So anything that there. Yeah, the supernatural cannot exist because there's always going to be a naturalistic explanation for it. We just have to go find the method. And,
I'm familiar with that. I just never heard it. Okay, yeah, I got you now.
And obviously, it's materialism obviously coincides with methodological naturalism, right? So you get into there will always be a materialistic and a naturalist explanation for whatever, right? So in the context of things like whether it be prokaryote to eukaryote evolution or going all the way to the root of origin of life, right? There must always be. And with origin of life, for example, it's gotten so ridiculous that they're now relying on there must be an unknown law of nature that makes this possible. Like we just haven't discovered this law of nature, even though this law of nature would have to somehow bend other laws of nature that we're aware of.
AKA a miracle.
It must occur, right? It must exist. We just haven't found it yet. And those types of things, to me, it's like, at what point do you? And this is why it kind of coincides with the whole like, does atheism cause adult mental retardation? There's so many things that they will adamantly argue are not remotely plausible that are way, way, way more likely to occur, right? And they'll be like, no, that's totally natural for something that's completely, outlandish, at least, but not nearly as unlikely as abiogenesis, for example. But then we'll passionately argue that somehow it happened. And I'm like, what? Hang on. You're claiming that I'm arguing from incredulity while you're literally contradicting yourself on this other topic. And then even though you will concede that it doesn't seem like there's any way it could possibly happen, we exist, therefore the probability is 1.
Maddox,
It's
did you
like-
watch the Dillahunty video that he made addressing abiogenesis mathematically?
I painfully made it through a short period of it. Yes.
Oh man, I watched that one. That was ugly. I can't believe he can sleep at night after that.
Well, it's brutal. I mean, it's painful, to be honest.
I mean, he's sitting there talking about other universes and unlimited time. I mean, I don't know. I thought that guy was a little more interested in what we can see and observe. And when we went to other universes, that was just rich.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, their hope is in, evolution. If it's not true, then, the whole world just is, well, I would say meaningless. They need that it needs that to be true.
But and John, one of the point to address that point you were making when you first came back in, one of the other things the way I approach it is, are there theists who believe in evolution? Yes. Obviously, they're called freaking theistic evolutionists, right? Yeah. Obviously, people do. And then there's
I have
other
another
folks,
term for them, but yeah.
and then there's other people who they believe in evolution, quote unquote believe, but they don't even really know what it means. And that's just what they're told on. But from a religious, faith perspective, they believe in God, and it's like, yeah, they're not even really considering it. It's like, oh yeah, that's how I exist, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But then in the context of, and again, I'm talking about for modern atheists, especially YouTube atheists, like whether or not they will admit it has nothing to do with whether or not evolutionary theory being true is a fundamental for their atheism. I mean, you think about the level of passion they will argue that God cannot exist because evolution is true. We hear it all the time from them. And it's like, no creator is required, therefore your God doesn't exist. You just believe that God had to create all this stuff. Like, you believe that God just poofed it out of it, just magic, and poofed animals out of thin air and all this other kind of stuff. Like, that's what you believe. And it's like, actually, that's not exactly what I believe. But that aside, if there is the requirement, like if your belief is 100% false and like cannot account for your existence, what are you left with?
Despair.
Well, I mean, ultimately left with despair, but I mean, in context of like your actual worldview and your whole explanation for your own existence, which you claim to be searching for, right? Especially like the agnostics and all that kind of stuff, right? Okay, evolution can't happen. Abiogenesis is not remotely plausible. How do you exist? What are you left with? Either, well, crap. The only conclusion that's remotely rational is there must be a higher power. Now, whether or not this is one of the things I say a lot of times is like, the way I kind of look at what I'm doing is kind of helping people reach that first point of, okay, you might not know which religion and which God is the correct one, but you are now forced to conclude that there must be one. And now it's time to go look, to go find what is the most rational conclusion. And I think for me, part of it stems from being a very analytical individual. For me, I operate from the perspective that we don't actually have to have that much quote unquote faith to believe in God.
I would agree with that.
And the Christian God, right? So I'm like, one of the things that kind of frustrates me with more of the traditional church kind of mindset, right? It's all about the faith, and it's all, you just have to have enough faith to read, And I'm like, okay, so the original definition of faith is not what we construe it to be in modern times. Number one,
faith is the evidence of something.
But number two, it's portrayed and very actively propagated to be by, especially like the atheist community, that it's this very esoteric and ethereal, like nebulous concept, right? Talking about belief in God, being able to have proof of God, that kind of stuff. And I'm like, it is not nebulous at all. If you actually take the time to consider things with an open mind, it is not a difficult leap of faith, to use the catchphrase, to conclude that God must exist. Like, this is not that hard. If you go and like actually contemplate, like, how do I exist? What are the things required for me to exist? Holy crap, that's amazing! Wow, that's phenomenal. Oh, holy crap, for the universe to exist, there's all these variables and stuff. And like, if you go down, not even that deep, you don't even have to go that far, and you're over. At least for me, you're like overwhelmed with all of this information. Like, yeah. Not much, not sure how much deeper I got to go to this to be the logical, plausible, and probable conclusion for my existence, you know? And then from there, if you want to continue down that path to learn more about it, awesome. Or it can be hey, all right, it's established, God exists. Now I got to figure out which one's the right one. And
Yeah,
then
I've had that
take the next step.
conversation with pastors before about the whole faith thing. Say, why exactly are you guys just so heavy on this? You need to have faith. You need to have faith. If it was just all about faith, I couldn't distinguish Christianity from any other religion out there. If it was just about faith, shouldn't we have faith in the evidence that we can see with our own eyes, that we can, examine historical evidence?
Yeah, I have a serious question about this. Wait, so what kind of denomination you guys grew up in? Because I'd never, well, I shouldn't say the word never. It wasn't like a part of my Christian upbringing with this whole oh, we need to have faith, or is just you just didn't have enough faith to do this and that. It seems like it's like a more like American Christianity thing, or is this like, I don't know. It seems like it's like a theme that keeps popping up, but I haven't anecdotally personally grew up with it.
I mean, I was raised Lutheran, but I actually went to a private Lutheran school, and we would ask questions once in a while. Well, how do they know the Earth is this old, and what do we think? And if it's really billions of years old, why does our Bible teach it's 6,000? The teachers just never had an answer, and I just don't think that's acceptable. That Christians need to do a better job. We got to teach kids while they're young, and we got to say, no, these things are not true, and we need to point out the flaws in naturalism. And and again, I mean, all we really got to do is start with abiogenesis. They always tell us, well, you need to prove who created God. If you can't tell me that, your theory doesn't count. Now say okay, well, show me abiogenesis naturally, and you can talk about the rest of it. I don't want to hear one single word about bones in the dirt, which do not count. I don't want to hear anything about mutations. Natural selection is the biggest joke I've ever heard in my life talking about evolution. It is stupid. It only will take what already exists. It is a non-factor. It doesn't count. Show me abiogenesis naturally, and you can start talking about the rest. Until then, I do not care.
To be honest,
faith.
To be honest, maybe because I kind of took I was in school in another country, and I came in the U.S. midway through my public school education, but I'm more and more complex that people find that argument convincing that, oh, natural selection, oh, bones in the dirt, that doesn't when I read in the textbooks, I'm that never really convinced me, even though I don't know,
natural selection in terms of a weeding out tool makes sense to me.
That is true.
Right. But the thing is, they would use it as ape to man evolution.
I know. I agree with you completely. I mean, the reality is that they ultimately end up trying to apply the weeding tool somehow takes on a borderline conscious agent aspect. I mean, for example, I'll give you a prime example. So one of the comments that has been left, okay? Case in point, literally says, this is a nice summation of your argument. I find no issue and therefore agree that for all purpose, genetic code is a code as you have defined in P1 through P4 at premise 5. And as such, premise 5 is also true. I think I would take issue with premise 6 since natural selection would certainly give the appearance of foreknowledge.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm just like, dude.
Yeah.
And by the way, this gentleman actually has a degree in biology, which concerns me. But like, let's think about this. So you are suggesting that natural selection, which occurs after, right?
Yeah.
Like,
After the fact.
this somehow accounts for the creation of a code base that has to be in existence on multiple facets. You have to have, and here's the irony for me is like, so you agreed with the first 4 premises, which outline like, hey, you have to have the data set, or like the code bases, or the 2 different sides of the code have to be assigned, the values have to be assigned, you have to have the translation mechanism that has to be able to interpret, like, so you concede all of those points.
Airtight points, by the way.
But then you say that natural selection can account for them? Well, they have to exist before natural selection can work. Like, what are you talking about?
When someone goes that far, I think it's okay to conclude that they're just lying.
Yeah.
I truly believe that.
Because if you accept all the way up to 4, it's just like you have to. There's no, I don't know. It's like, I'm gonna be quiet. I'll just baffle.
So, hey, Mr. Miller, I was gonna say like, kind of the rest of where I got into this a little bit was, I was in a Bible study when I was about 25 years old, and one of the guys that was there with me, I was asking him some questions, and he said, "Oh, well, you got, I can give you a video and you can check it out and see what you think." And he gave me Answers in Genesis VHS. I went back and watched it, and I was definitely not impressed at all. It was an hour-long video, gave basically no answers to any question I had. I gave it back to him and said, "Yeah, not very good. I think I'm gonna maybe look elsewhere." And he goes, "Well, I'll try a different one here." So he gave me a couple Hovind videos, and I was pretty blown away by it. I know it was a little more, it's entry level stuff, but I thought that he did a really, really good job of explaining to people who weren't familiar with any of these arguments whatsoever. And from there, so many people beyond that point to look at. And then I really got into watching debates, because I thought that a debate is literally the best way to kind of weed out, true things, lies, perspectives and whatnot. And I just thought that the creationists did a way, way, way better job than the evolutionists did. So it strengthened my faith in Christianity. And, I'm somewhat at this point in time where I'm not ashamed to call myself a creationist at all. I wear it as a, huge badge of honor.
Yeah, I could definitely relate. I mean, I didn't have like a crisis of faith. Because when I was going to college, church members warned me, hey, look out for these atheists. They're cunning, they're smart, they're sneaky. Keep hearing stories about, oh yeah, my granddaughter went to college university, she came back an atheist, blah blah blah. And I'm just like, okay, let's just see what these big brain atheists, what they have to say with their arguments. And boy, I was like, the fact that I was disappointed, so greatly disappointed. I was to the point where I'm just like frustrated. I'm just like how is anyone buying their horse crap? And that ultimately like strengthened my faith. It's like the biggest like arguments against Christianity is just, it's Diet Coke. That's like the greatest argument you guys could come up with. And I'm just like,
it's guaranteed that it will be God drowned babies, the slavery, the creation fallacies.
Oh yeah, always the slavery one.
Yeah, that's about it. I mean, that's they're usually gonna, as soon as you get them pinned, they're gonna like, well, your God believes in slavery. I mean, it's like guaranteed. I actually did a little video where I made fun of that stuff, but it's like, it's almost guaranteed. Like the second you get them pinned on something, it could be a completely different topic, and be like, well, you know what? Your God believes in, thinks slavery's okay. It's like,
it's embarrassing, man.
It will happen,
and they say with a straight face, like they're winning their argument. Almost like Like who? Like what kind of Christian are you debating? Is this actually working on like I don't know.
All right.
I
So,
mean,
so it
I
looks
mean,
like we got a new. Let's see what I got to see what this is. Hang on. We got a. Oh man. Excellent, excellent, funny comments just given. Okay, so this is from somebody who's apparently mad at me. This is for the code argument. The foundational caveat in this entire video is that it is based on the presupposition that a god or an intelligent agent creator exists. Oh, the irony. Most of all these arguments theists try to make fail in the same way. They presuppose a god instead of demonstrating a god. Oh, good Lord. Of course, we're going to call you out on that. That is why we don't address your arguments. We address the fallacy. Okay, here's where it gets even better. That is why we don't need to watch the whole video, because already in the first minute, you demonstrate your bias. It makes watching this video any further pointless. Oh, that's too good. Oh, man. And another one, code is literally code. Therefore, my God. Really? This logic is as flawed as they come. Like, again, dude, oh, man.
this quote unquote like, oh, you guys have a presupposition, therefore your argument is wrong. It's like I don't understand that. Like, do they actually think it's an actual argument? Oh, you have beliefs, so therefore your beliefs are wrong.
It's painful. It really is painful.
So like they can presuppose, like, you know, millions of years swamp people to astronauts. They could presub that, but then like we can't rashly conclude an intelligent agent, and then that's like, oh, God of the gaps. Like
I had this other guy comment earlier. He said that he asked if, in a very sarcastic manner, if my argument was deductive, inductive, or abductive. And it's like, oh, good Lord. I mean, I'm going to go with inductive, but the inductive to reach an abductive conclusion. But it's like, you're not even, and this is the part where I stress so heavily, like your counterpoints must be based in recognized information and communication theory. And if you don't understand it and you don't know the basics, go read them before you respond. Because if you don't understand the basics, then you have no idea if what I'm arguing is actually correct. None. And you're an idiot because you're buying into this premise that it's freaking Diet Coke, not actual code. But you don't know what actually makes a code. Like, if you don't know the basics of this, how are you even making an argument? Oh, wait, you're not. You're living in a biased environment and buying into what you're being told to believe by people who don't actually know the answer themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the irony. I kind of made that joke in the video of like, so you admit you don't understand a word that's coming out of my mouth, but your buddy who also doesn't understand what I'm saying says that agrees with you that I'm wrong. Like, so two people who don't understand what's being discussed, they're the ones that we're supposed to believe. No, they're the idiots. And the level of sidebar on this too, I should have let you guys talk. Another aspect of this is the ego, right? Like, you admit that you don't know what is being discussed. You've never studied it. You freely admit that you will not go study it to go find out if your position is correct or not. But 100% believe your position is correct, the other person's is false. Like, I can't imagine. That's like the antithesis of the way I operated in my life. Like, if I don't know something, I go and find out what it is.
Right.
If somebody else is an expert in something or knows better than me, at a minimum, I'm going to ask them questions. And I may try to get to a point where I know more than them. And if I can, right? At the same time, I'm also going to respect people that have spent more time learning something than I have. And I'm going to do everything in my power to, extract as much information as I can from them so that I have at a minimum, I can carry on a high level conversation about something. I might not be an expert and know every intricacy, but at least I can understand what the hell is being talked about.
Right.
And the fact that it's like the internet atheists, like they consciously do the alternative or the direct opposite. Like, I'm going to avoid gaining more information at all costs. It's fascinating.
And they call themselves intellectuals. That's that's the I wonder if it's the what's that phenomenon when you have like middle and IQ people believing that they're more intelligent than they actually are. What is that called again?
Catalyst engineer.
Is that? Oh man, is that Dunning? It's not Dunning-Kruger, is it?
The Dunning-Kruger effect? Is that?
Yeah, is a cognitive bias in which people with low ability at a task overestimate their ability. Is related to the cognitive bias of illusory superiority and comes from people's inability to recognize their lack of ability.
Yeah, that's scary, man. Like I just pray that I'll never get. I just pray my brain will never get that big for me to like fall into that trap. That just frightens. The fact that people would be complacent into their like, well, my science teacher told me this, so it has to be true, and and then that's it.
I honestly, this is a theory. I'd love to get you guys' opinion on this. So I would say, at least I'm talking about the modern era, like right now, a exacerbation of the Dunning-Kruger effect would probably stem from a couple things. One would be the whole everybody's a winner thing and everybody gets a trophy. Would be one facet of it. A secondary piece would be it's much harder to lose, at least in Western civilization, right? And by lose, I mean like end up in poverty, like extreme poverty. Like you can be an idiot and still live a decent life, right? In
this country,
at least in the current moment in the United States, like you can be an idiot and still live okay. You only have one car, but you've got a brand new iPhone and a PS4. You're living okay. I mean, you're not starving. Like it's okay, right? But really, that whole everybody being told they're a winner, I think could have significant ramifications on that creation of a faux confidence. I mean, and the secondary thing, the other thing I was thinking about too was all that said, there is a dramatic. Western civilization has a significant self-confidence problem, and that leads to a projection of faux confidence. I used to when I had my software company, I used to I was hiring people on a regular basis, and it was very interesting to me, interacting with all those different folks, coming out of college, like different demographics, right? Both professionally in business development stuff and business relationships, but also with employees. But one of the things I looked into in terms of hiring was I remember reading all these studies on and found out about all these training camps for people of how to fake confidence in an interview.
Oh, wow.
And how for college kids, this is 2013. I remember reading this one, and it was actually it was 2012. Anyway, there was this whole deal about how advisors in colleges and stuff they're doing this whole thing where they were teaching college graduates or kids about to graduate from college, literally how to fake being confident in an interview. And I'm like, well, that's a freaking problem. You're telling people don't actually be confident in what you've learned and what you bring to the table. You just act like you are. And of course, that's a whole nother conversation in terms of is there anything of real value being taught in a lot of aspects of our education system? That's a whole nother conversation. But in relation to one of the macro ramifications of all this is the few people who actually do have self-confidence are perceived as being, and I'm not saying there aren't people that are ridiculously arrogant folks, but they're perceived as they must be narcissistic, overconfident jerks if they have self-confidence by default, because these other people are literally faking it and they haven't ever done anything they feel that gives them a sense of self-worth. Therefore, most other people must be like them. Therefore, anybody who's acting confident must also be faking it. And I think that all those different facets I'm talking about, I'm sure there's many others, but those are some major pieces that I think are resulting in some of these things like the Dunning-Kruger effect that we're talking about here. Does that all make sense? That little convoluted diagram there?
I think it does. I think that
Eh.
when you have a bunch of kids that are coming out of college these days, I feel that a lot of their parents haven't prepared them for the world.
Mm-hmm.
And they look around and just think like, I'm probably better than that person. I'm probably better than that person, when they've never accomplished anything in their life. When they kind of get hit with the reality that, oh my gosh, I mean, you have to get up and go to work. I mean, you have to take care of a family. You have to pay bills. You have to be a responsible citizen. You got to cut the grass. They're not willing to do these things, nor do they know how to do them. And I think they retreat into a fantasy world where they think, yeah, no, I'm really good. I know I don't know how to do any of this stuff, but I'm smarter and I know more. And it's just simply it's kind of like someone who maybe watches a boxing match or watches a UFC. They're like, oh, I would have done this. I would have done that.
Yeah.
Well, you're not in the ring and you didn't go through the 1,000 hours of training and you couldn't do it, So you sit there and, fake that you're a lot better and you would have done this. You would have been, more successful. And it's like, nah, I think you're probably just lying to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on what. Yeah, I'll piggyback on what John pretty much just saying. Like, but I'll use Carl Jung as like I guess a battering ram for this. Pretty much like it's pretty. Like, I think Carl Jung was like talking about how pretty much men are. Well, not even men, like people in Western society are in a state of like internal youth. Like pretty much, and that's like plaguing like Western society. Like the fact that like most people in the West, they're not growing up. They're not figuring out how to be a functioning an
well,
adult.
no, you're absolutely correct. I mean, there's actually been formal studies on that and how like specifically with males, similar things happen with females, but with males specifically, the mental maturity of like 1950 or whatever it was, an 18-year-old in 1950 is not being reached until about age 26 or 27
or higher
now. And I personally think it's probably actually for lots of people, it's later than that.
It is later. It's for sure later.
I mean, the data showed the average is 26. Like whatever. I agree with you completely, John. I mean, it's later than that for sure. I mean, some of the stuff that the people I've interacted with, I'm just like, I don't understand how you are not like seeing. You're not recognizing what you're doing is extraordinarily immature. Like I wouldn't have done something this dumb when I was in college, let alone now I'm in my 30s. Like, are you kidding me? What are you doing? Makes no sense whatsoever. And don't get me wrong, like I did some bunch of dumb stuff too, but there was plenty of dumb things that I did that I would not have gone to that extreme. I recognized it even in drunken stupors. Like, yeah, that's probably a bad idea. Even drunk, I wouldn't have done that. It's amazing. And I did some dumb stuff.
I mean, I was 22 years old. I bought a house and had a job, didn't have a roommate, and I was able to, afford all my bills just on a 40-hour, work week. And, I was probably the average kid that came out of high school. I definitely wasn't the smartest. I wasn't the lowest. I was very, very much in the middle. And I thought, like I did okay. I'm not impressed. But I mean, think a kid now. If you know a 22-year-old that has his own house, with no roommates helping out and has a solid job. I mean, that kid is a wunderkind.
That's an extreme rarity.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, I tell people, friends that I have that are a lot younger, I said, look, I'm not trying to tell you this to make myself seem better. I'm just trying to tell you that back in my day, this was not considered an anomaly. It was not unusual. That's what kind of most people just did.
Yeah.
Well, and the college drop is not helping that situation. And to be fair, I guess technically like 6 years ago, I'm technically I'm kind of in the same boat now because me making like dumb mistakes. Oh, I need to get a 4-year degree, and then I find out there's that. That's real, and I was like, okay, I need to grow up. This is stupid. And that's not. That's probably another factor. That's probably not.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, the college trap is getting ridiculous at this. It's well past being ridiculous. I mean, they jumped the shark a decade ago, and all I gotta say is the student loan debt in the United States in the last 12 years has gone up $1 trillion. So there's, in my opinion, at this point, there is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The student loan debt trap is real. And
it was as big a deal as the subprime mortgage crisis.
Actually now it's actually greater than what the debt load was in subprime.
I would say it's as big of a scam. I would call it.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think I think the student loan deal is a bigger scam than the real estate, the mortgage scam. I mean, when you think about the premise that you can get a 50-year student loan, 50 years, that's insane. It's longer than you can get on a freaking mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
Who doesn't if that's not a scam? I don't know what is. You legislatively make it so that all that debt's going to go to the government, and then you fast forward to right now, and you've got potentially future president, although fingers crossed, Joe Biden, literally stating that his plan, while we are literally in economic meltdown, is, hey, I'm going to forgive $50,000 of student loan debt with a stroke of a pen.
That would end our educational system. I mean, I know I'm probably being hyperbolic, but that would
not really
simplifies a lot of
you're
bad
true.
behavior.
I agree
Even though I'll be, So I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was just agreeing with you. I don't think you are being hyperbolic. I agree with you.
Yeah, that whole deal, it's staggering. And to your point you were making, John, about buying a house and such. I mean, when you really think about I believe the last time I'd looked at it, the average undergraduate debt load it just tipped $40,000. That was the average for undergrad now. And one of the reasons I find that so significant is when I first started tracking this stuff back in 2009, the average debt load was like $23,000, I think it was. And then by 2012, it was at $27,000. And then I've been tracking it ever since. And now you tipped $40,000 for the average undergraduate debt load.
And I think that one of the dirty little secrets is once you actually get your first job, at that point in time, no one cares what college you went to.
Yep.
Literally, no one cares.
Yep, it's all about work experience at that point.
Correct.
And do you have the checkbox for the stupid HR department that wants to make sure everybody's got the degree to make sure it fulfills the hiring protocols? It's so ridiculous. But to me, going back to the maturity level and just the stability that's shattered in Western civilization, especially in the States, of okay, so their student loan is $700 a month. Do you actually so that's, in some markets that could literally be their mortgage, or in other markets it could be half or 75% or heck even 40% of a potential mortgage payment. And they've got that, and they're going to be paying on that for 20, 30 years. Like, come on. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
You think about the money that's not going into a 401k that could have been going into a 401k.
Oh, I know. Oh my God.
And you just extrapolate that out. And here's the other part that really pisses me off about it. So yeah, so I've been an entrepreneur since my first stint in college. And one of the things that always was drilled into me when I was getting into business and reading books and all that kind of stuff, and investment in general, is when you're young or earlier in your life, you take, in terms of your stock market investments, right? What do? What are you told? oh, invest in slightly higher risk so that even if there's a adjustment or a collapse, you have, because you're young, you have more time to recover. When you get older, you shift your portfolio into more stable stocks, bonds, etc. Because if something does happen, you don't have time to recover, right? I'm like, oh, so let's think about this from an entrepreneurial perspective. This, what I'm about to tell you, I flipped a gourd on some folks in an quote unquote entrepreneur college about this. They were literally teaching kids who wanted to be entrepreneurs, and somehow we're getting an entrepreneurial degree, which makes no sense to me. But anyway, they were being told, okay, after you graduate, go get a job for a couple of years. And then after you've gained some experience, then go and try and start your business. And I'm like, okay, here's why that's dumb. Number one, you still have, you haven't built, as when you're young, you haven't built so much of the cynicism that you have as you get older, right? Number two, you have energy. You can just go. Number three, you don't have nearly as many responsibilities, both fiscally and just from relationship perspective. Yeah. The majority of people, right? You're probably okay with living with roommates, and if I have to eat ramen, whatever, no big deal, because you're coming out of college or you're still young, you haven't really experienced like the differences, right? And if you fail, since the majority of entrepreneurial endeavors fail, well, what? Okay, you're young, you failed. Now go get a job, right? Or try again. No. What do we tell people? Hey, wait 10 years or so. What are you gonna? Okay, you think about that. 10 years when you graduate from college, you're now 30 or 32, 31, 32. There's a very high probability that A, you have a wife, husband, maybe you have a kid, you might have that house payment. Either way, your expenses have gone up for sure. You have more responsibility. And now you're being told, now is when you should go take the greater risk. What? Now, okay, let's say you're, most businesses fail within 3 years. Okay, fine. So you started at 32. Now you're 35 and it failed. Now you're starting over again.
Yeah, if you have a wife and kids, that's not happening.
Absolutely.
Unless you never want to see them again.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's one of the reasons that entrepreneurship is it's one of the top causes of divorce.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah, that makes sense.
It's actually kind of interesting studies on that stuff, like business owners who get married, whether it be the first time or for their second relationship, after they've reached success. Those marriages usually are very stable because they've got flexibility, they got time, they've got income, all these different things. Like the stress levels usually are dramatically mitigated versus the person who has the traditional 9-to-5 job, right? The relationships that start either during or just prior to the launch of a company have a ridiculously high failure rate. It's almost 90%. And like I'm walking, talking example of that. And it's very interesting in our society how people are conditioned. Like there's this whole thing, oh yeah, you're working at a startup, that's awesome. Like, oh, you're being an entrepreneur, you're doing this, oh, it's super cool. But then in the context of relationships, they don't understand, like, why are you not around? I work a 9-to-5. Why aren't you home at 5? Right? Yeah. And it's like, well, because I'm wearing like 17 hats right now because we ain't got all the employees to do all this stuff, and we're trying to be successful. Anyway, I could go off on a diatribe about that for hours, but
I gotta get going. But I just wanted to say the last thought. I appreciate you getting SFT to be a little bit snarkier to these guys. They
deserve it
in their place a little bit.
Yeah, it is interesting. SFT has definitely been getting a little. Oh, by sidebar, did you guys know that there was this whole discussion about how, from some atheists, about how SFT was just too mean to David P. Neff the other
day? Really?
Yep. Oh yeah, SFT apparently, according to I think it was Leo Filius and Jackson Wheat, a couple others, they were all like just all up in arms about how SFT just kept calling out David P. Neff. Like, no, answer the question. Like that was
like
brutal.
like to me, I don't know. To me, it seems like he's being like more like a professor, like trying to like educate him or something. More so like I don't know. It doesn't seem nowhere near like bullying.
Well, I mean, I
don't know.
agree with you. I don't think he's being like over the top mean or anything. He's just not letting him run away and holding him to account. And apparently now I mean, SFT is just super mean.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of jaw jacking. I wouldn't call
I mean-
it. I wouldn't call it too aggressive.
Yeah, he hasn't turned into me yet, which is good.
Right. Because when Doc got in, I mean, he dropped a couple S and F bombs, I think, on the guy, and that may have been a little bit aggressive. But
You talking about me?
yeah,
Oh, you talking about Doc Savage?
I think it was Doc. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely did say he was full of BS a couple times.
Right. And that's okay. A
Well,
little bit of jaw
well,
jacking here and
he
there
had
is
been
okay.
in that context in the side chat, and also at the beginning of that interaction, he was in a very snide way claiming that I didn't know what I was talking about.
Yeah,
And
well, I heard it.
yeah, a little joker. I tell you what, that was one of the most fun interactions I've had when at the end, after talking about his published papers, he conceded that what he was talking about was false and that he had misspoke. I got some good fun on that one. But,
No, we all did. All right, I'm gonna get out. I'm gonna head to bed.
John, have a great night, man. Appreciate you
you.
coming in.
Yep, bye.
Yeah, I should probably go to bed. But
Yeah,
this
actually,
is
I was
great.
thinking the same thing. It's 1:15 my time. It's time to hit the sack. Will, you're back.
Yeah,
You have a good stream with Sal. Will, if you're talking, you're on mute.
All right, I see you.
See you, Mr. Miller. Have a good night.
Yo, what's up, John?
What's up, man? Did you have a good round 2 with Sal?
Dude, I love Saul so much.
Are you feeling smarter?
What?
I say, are you feeling smarter and more educated now?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna be John Lennox.
What were we all reviewing in this second stream?
Yeah, so Dr. Dan. So he has given me some biology book to look into it.
Okay.
So I was asking Saul, what does he think about it? So Saul says I should start by biogenesis and eukaryote evolution to learn the basic. So Saul says we're gonna go through that book together, and he's gonna teach me science, like math, because my main problem in school is pretty much math.
Okay, that's cool.
I'm really behind on school because before I got saved I was joking in school and all that type of stuff, so I'm really behind. But I think I can I'm probably gonna end up going to college 1 or 2 years later that I was supposed to, but I'll still be going there.
Well, that's good. Well, I mean, and you can, if you're excited to learn, it's amazing how much you can learn in a very short period of time. If you're excited about it.
Yeah, I'm motivated. Yeah.
Well, and one of the things for you to remember is you are still in the age range where your brain is literally operating in a slightly different way than mine is, like an adult brain is. So you actually are still not as much as when you were like 5, 6, 7, but you still have a more, basically you're more in an open download mode. And so if you're like, you can be a giant funnel of information into your brain and have just because you're learning all sorts of new stuff, right? And your brain can just absorb it in a much more rapid manner than somebody like my age and older can.
Yeah, because I'm still developing. My brain is just it's just like if I drink literally and it just stay inside.
So if you're if you start focusing on different things and just spending time, and you also have because you're still a kid, you have the opportunity to have more time to learn stuff too. Then you don't have as many of the responsibilities as adults do, right? So something that would take an adult longer to absorb, both from just a learning speed perspective as well as just the time availability, you could just go into download mode and You may already do this, but something else you might think about would be whether it be on YouTube, podcasts, or just audiobooks. You can also, put those things on, 1.5 speed and just breeze through a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, especially noting. I usually do a lot of noting. Like I have like a whole. I've went into Perry Marshall class on DNA, and I've took like a whole I've read a lot about it.
Yep, and you can get into. I mean, you got Canva. I'm just not Canva. Khan Academy, and I mean, there's just so many sources out there where you can go and find a lecture on pretty much any topic. It's the ultimate irony for those who claim ignorance. I'm like, you can literally go and at a minimum, you can learn the fundamentals of pretty much any topic, any subject for free.
Yeah.
In a very rapid period of time.
What do you think I should start for biogenesis? Any source that I should start from?
Have you read Dr. Stadler's book on it?
Oh, what they didn't teach you in biology class?
No, that's his one on evolution. Stairway to Life.
Stairways to Life. Where can I find it?
I know he's got a Kindle version because I've got it.
Stairway to Life. What is it? The Kindle version? Is it not on Amazon?
Yeah, it's on
Something
Amazon.
like that.
Yeah.
So how does it work? You just buy it and you get it like on your phone, basically.
Yep.
So it's by Dr. Rob
Stadler.
Will you type his name? Dr.
Rob. It's Stadler.
Oh, Stadler. The Stairways to Life.
Yep. Yeah, that book is an utter annihilation of abiogenesis in a very structured manner. Like, he explains the fundamentals, like each step, each one of the paradoxes, the major conundrums from a chemistry perspective, an information perspective. He just goes through all of them he and another PhD chemist go through it in a very detailed, very understandable structure. I'm just like, this is why this is ludicrous. And I mean, they're not being sarcastic about it. They're just outlining every single piece of it. Like, okay, let's move on to the next one. Now, let's assume that you've been able somehow, even though it doesn't seem remotely plausible, let's assume you have accounted for, step 1, step 2, step 3. Now we're on step 4. This is why step 4 by itself is not plausible. So, I mean, but by the time you get to the end, it's of the known requirements. Each one of those stages, you're just like, that is not even, none of these are remotely plausible to happen without an intelligent agent, let alone all of them which we know have to have happened if life created itself.
Well, I just got I just got the book for free because of Amazon Prime.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I just I got, okay, it's basically with Amazon Prime, you can just get it for free. It's for $1. So I get 10,000 free book.
Yeah, you got the Kindle Unlimited or whatever.
Yep.
That's awesome. Well, folks, I think I am going to call it a night. And what? Yeah, hang on. What's Luca saying here? Luca, are you denying that that the genetic code is a code? Really, Luca? It sounds pretty young to me. I'm not sure.
I think he's speaking about me, maybe because of my name. Yeah, he's speaking about me.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah, he is. I get that now. I've forgotten you.
Oh, Luca's the guy that says because plan prove evolution.
Yeah.
Oh, you can have it on an audio, but is Kinko only by audio?
Is what?
Oh, you can get it into the audio book too, right?
I don't know if I don't know if that one has an audiobook version. I think they only got the Kindle and the print version.
Oh, so basic for self-replicating cell synthesis, decoding the code, all that type of stuff. That's gonna be pretty interesting. So I'm gonna start reading by that. All right, sounds good, bro.
Yeah, that's a really good one, man. If you read that book, you will have a very good understanding of all the basics of abiogenesis. And
Sounds good.
I say basics, you will have a good understanding of it at a level higher than probably 90% of the people that we interact with.
Yeah, and I've seen your streaming more recently. You have been stream. Are you starting back to stream?
Am I starting to stream again?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I haven't like seen you for streaming for like 1 or 2 weeks before that. Do you just like do three stream per weeks, or how does your stream work?
It just depends when I have time. Yeah, I've been making a little bit more time recently. Just kind of forced myself to, but I was getting kind of I enjoy doing it. It's fun, and I get kind of bored. And plus, I'm getting ready to move and do some other stuff, so I know I won't have as
All right, sounds good, bro.
much time, but it's all good.
I'm gonna be hopping off there. So stay safe. God bless you. God bless the stream, and all of you stay safe.
Appreciate
Peace
it.
out.
Have a good night. All right, folks. On that note, unless somebody else wants to join right now, I think I am going to call it a night. It's almost 1:30 my time. Yep, it is time to go to bed. Appreciate all of y'all for hanging out, and those of you joining the stream and the great side chat, and everybody having good conversation. There's been some back and forth, some fire, some conflict, some good discussions, and open minds, closed minds, and hopefully we'll all continue to enjoy these interactions. But appreciate everybody, and I hope that you all have a good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. And as I love to say, as you consider the factors for what enables you to exist, make sure that the conclusion that you reach is logical, plausible, and probable. Have a good night, y'all.